Dr. Yogendra Nagpal. So I would like to request you all observe 1 minute silence to pay homage to the departed soul. Thank you. Respected professors, dear participants, I welcome you all on behalf of my center to our first online webinar on interpretation. Дорогие участники, уважаемые профессора, я от имени нашего центра, Центр русских исследований, приветствую вас всех на сегодняшнем вебинаре. Any dialogue in the field of between two nations, in the field of whether politics, culture, trade and commerce, or any other field, cannot be complete without the support of an interpreter, a person with the knowledge of both the languages. No doubt, it is a very responsible job because any little deviation from the meaning or omission of certain words can lead to a catastrophe. It is very important to master the nuances of interpretation other than knowing the language. Today, we are very privileged to have amongst us two of our senior professors who are the leading experts in interpretation, Professor Ramadhikari Kumar and Professor Charanjit Singh. Thank you so much for accepting our request and agreeing to share your experiences. We also have amongst us Dr. Chinnakadan James, who is teaching in University of Delhi and also he has a lot of experience in interpretation. Thank you, Dr. James. We may also have Ms. Shipra Ghosh. She's a little busy today, but she promised that she will be joining whenever she can during this course of webinar. So I would like to thank her also. I'm sure you will have a very interesting session today. We will all enjoy it. Now, I would request Dr. Kiran Singh Verma to give a detailed introduction to our speakers. Dr. Verma.
Can you please unmute your mic?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Ranjana Banerjee. Good morning, everyone. Dobre Uttara Sim. Professor Ramadhikari Kumar has worked at the Center of Russian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, where he's taught for more than 40 years. His areas of interest are Russian language translation and translation theory. He's from the very first batch of then Institute of Russian Studies, which was later renamed as Center of Russian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. It was established in 1969, and its very first convocation was held 3 years later in 1972. And Professor Ramadhikari Kumar got his degree in this first convocation, and he has done his PhD from Moscow, Russia. He was and he is one of the best teachers of interpretation and translation, not only in our university, but whole of India. He's a professional and a well-known interpreter, not only in India, but also Russia and other CIS countries. He has amazing language skills and an exhaustive grasp of languages. He's very knowledgeable and experienced and an excellent communicator. He has interpreted in a number of bilateral summits at government levels. He was one of the interpreters with our Prime Minister during his visit to Russia in 2015. He has participated in a number of national and international conferences in India and abroad. Professor Kumar has got Pushkin Award 2 times for his contribution to the Russian language teaching. He's the first professor from India to get Russian State Pushkin Award, which was handed to him personally by Honorable President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Professor Kumar has also worked in All India Radio and had participated in a number of programs for many years and got lots of fame in Russia for his language proficiency. Professor Ramadhikari Kumar, Professor Ramadhikari Kumar is one of the best teachers of Russian language, linguistics, research methodology, and taught almost all courses which are taught in Center of Russian Studies at BA and MA level and MPhil. Thank you very much. I invite Professor Ramadhikari Kumar. So you are most welcome.
Sir, can you please unmute your mic? Kumar sir, just need to click on the option unmute mic, which must be there on your screen. Sir, so please click on unmute mic.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Now you're audible. Thank you.
Okay.
Please, sir.
Прежде всего, спасибо огромное вам всем, что организовали такое мероприятие. Я уже, что сказать, я уже давно не говорил по-русски. Сейчас мы не можем выходить просто из дома. Такие времена поступили. Будем надеяться, что очень скоро эти трудные времена пройдут, и тогда мы можем общаться друг с другом и встречать друг друга. Что касается преподавания русского языка в Индии, вы знаете, как сказали, мы являемся, просто я и вместе с моими друзьями, мы, конечно, являемся первым выпускником Центра русских исследований. Ну, тогда это Институт русских исследований был, когда началось преподавание русского языка и литературы в нашей стране. Это было, конечно, давно. За это время первое время, когда мы учились, и нам, так сказать, повезло, нас учили преподаватель из Московского университета Лидия Николаевна Муравьева была преподавательницей нашей группы, и в начале 3 группы были, и все, конечно, русские преподаватели преподавали нас. И это, конечно, помогло нам. Мы могли понять язык хорошо. Они тоже уделяли огромное внимание на душу языка, то есть фонетику. Фонетика является душой, как у любого языка. И это потом мы, конечно, 2 группы были. И одна группа, конечно, обратила внимание на литературу, другая группа на перевод. И я был в другой группе, в группе переводчиков. И нам тогда повезло, был очень хороший преподаватель-переводчик, который не знал только русский язык, но знал и английский язык прекрасно. И так нам повезло. Первый раз, ну так, мы, конечно, когда закончили, то я был из группы переводчиков, и другие мои друзья из группы литературы, как бы профессор Вариам Синг и другие. Первый раз, тогда я еще был в последнем курсе в Центре русских исследований, министр образования Муниш Раза, он должен был выступать в гостинице, как называется гостиница, но в одной гостинице он выступал. Там были, конечно, русские друзья. Профессор Чакраварти, наш, то есть директор Центра русских исследований, и он отправил меня, да, иди, там есть русские, и Муниш Раза будет говорить на английском языке, ты будешь переводить. Это был первый перевод в моей жизни, но, конечно, я волновался тоже, но повезло, я перевел, то есть там не так плохо, и после этого, конечно, ко мне подходили многие там русские и другие. И так началось, вот, как сказать, работа переводчика. После этого, конечно, были большие конференции, где я и профессор Чаранджит Синг тоже в этой группе, и некоторые другие. И после этого, конечно, мы почти каждый раз вместе работали. Даже сейчас могу вспомнить все конференции, много, это дюжины, больше дюжины. Там другие тоже были, приезжали, скажем, министры из тогда СССР, потом Россия, конечно, для подписания различных соглашений. Первый раз, конечно, вот такое, это когда Minister of State, то есть помощник министра, главного министра, он выступал, это было для развития науки, и тогда выступал этот наш Minister of State. И мы вот, меня пригласили, я то есть переводил там, неплохо говорили они были, конечно, очень довольны. И таким образом пошла эта дорога долгое время. Вот сейчас, конечно, можно переводить тоже, но сейчас люди там, которые работают в Министерстве иностранных дел, там тоже есть переводчики, и они, конечно, выполняют эту работу. Но когда большие конференции, то приглашают нас до сих пор. Но для этого, конечно, не только знание языка, но знание, то есть всего мира. вы должны знать, что происходит сейчас в мире в разных областях. Если вы имеете такое, то есть знание, это всегда помогает. И поэтому переводчик должен не только обращать внимание только на языки, но он должен знать, что происходит в мире, вокруг него, вокруг мира. Это все, конечно, помогает ему, когда он выполняет работу переводчика. Поэтому вот не надо, то есть сидеть дома, все только читать книги на русском языке и на английском языке, но и надо знать, что происходит в мире. Это очень нужно для переводчика. Поэтому наши выпускники, наши студенты, которые собираются стать переводчиком, они должны обратить внимание на такие вещи обязательно. А что можно? Я думаю, что я уже много говорил. Большое спасибо за приглашение и желаю всех будущих переводчиков всего доброго, чтобы они выполнили свою работу хорошо и как говорят, помогли в расширении дружбы между разными странами, то есть здесь Индии и Россией. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое, сэр. Сэр, а могли бы вы какие-то представить какие-нибудь примеры, может быть, когда вам было трудно в начале, либо когда-то вы...
Примеры в каком смысле примеры?
Примеры, то есть русского языка, ну, то, когда вы работали, то есть что было там вам трудно, и как вы, ну, то есть решили такие вопросы?
Ну, в смысле, понимаете, какие да, я не говорил, какие трудности встречают. Вот, понимаете, если вы переводите с русского на английский и выступает, если человек из России, и он, конечно, говорит хорошо по-русски, не трудно. Иногда выступают другие люди, скажем, из Казахстана и другие такие страны. Не все старые знали, понимаете, когда Советский Союз был, то везде русский язык, главный язык был. Но после этого есть такие люди, которые на русском говорят, но не так, как говорят русские. То это тоже иногда вы должны понять хорошо и должны держать себя, не надо беспокоиться. Если переводчик будет беспокоиться, то трудно будет ему переводить. И также бывает даже на международной конференции, обычно конференции двуязычные, русский язык и английский язык. Но на английском языке говорят люди с разных территорий, с разным акцентом и так далее. И иногда вот так трудно бывает. Он говорит, конечно, на английском языке, по-английски говорит, но у него интонация, другие такие вещи, которые не очень так. Но мы должны потерпеть все это и должны понять, что именно он хочет сказать. Вот такие трудности появляются, поэтому переводчик должен держать себя все время. Если он будет беспокоиться, то, конечно, не может очень хорошо переводить. Я думаю, хватит, да? Можете, профессор будет добавлять больше.
Ну, можно и даже тогда ну, как-то просить, если есть вопросы, как-нибудь у нас...
Пожалуйста, если...
Может быть, вопросы будут в конце?
Ну, как
может быть, после выступления, чтобы сразу была дискуссия?
Лучше сразу вопросы.
Хорошо.
Да, я думаю, лучше будет после того, как выступает, и после выступления, пожалуйста, вопросы. Это хорошо.
मुझे विठल जी पद्मिमाल से रुको विठल जी
Да, Виталий.
can you please unmute your mic?
Yeah. Привет всем коллегам и особенно моему преподавателю, профессору Кумару. Я учился под вашим руководством, если вы помните меня.
Помню, хорошо помню, дорогой.
Я работал как переводчик.
Как забыть своих студентов нельзя?
Да, вот именно, да. Я работал переводчиком где-то 30 лет.
Да.
Как устный, так и письменный. Это чисто технически.
Да, то твоя область.
Это, конечно, как вы преподавали и тогда. Да, кроме языка, какие-то важные аспекты будущий переводчик должен знать. Это знание всего.
Конечно.
Значит, как это по-английски говорится, you should be jack of all.
Да.
You should know everything.
И еще нужно, если я могу добавить, знать языки, это недостаточно, понимаете? И когда, если письменный перевод, то там у вас есть поддержка, вы можете словарь посмотреть, все это. Но когда устный перевод, и все синхронный,
Синхронный это ужас.
Тогда запас у вас больше ничего нету. Но все равно я об одном не говорил. Если вы собираетесь, то есть переводить на какой-нибудь конференции, все, то нужно подготовить себя обязательно. Да. Некоторые люди думают, что просто так пойдем. Это нехорошо. Это зависит, вы можете повседневно говорить по-русски, по-английски, все нормально. Но когда бывают конференции, когда читают, то есть доклады различные, то вы должны познакомиться с темой конференции и должны подготовиться. И не надо думать, что я все знаю. Вы должны подготовить. Если будет хорошая подготовка, то там тогда вам будет легче, конечно, переводить.
Еще один аспект я хочу добавить от моего опыта. Так сказать, это мы индийцы. Говорим, как будто это человек, они, как это, выступают какие-то политические лекции.
Да.
А там нет никакой грамматики, ничего нет. Вот вы знаете. Это тоже они, студенты, должны понимать. Что один говорит, как говорят, на юге по-английски, другой говорит...
Вот поэтому я говорил, когда говорят на английском языке, то все говорят по-своему. И поэтому вы должны готовы к этому. И надо уловить смысл речи все время.
Да. А еще один аспект, поскольку это касается, это бывший СССР, сейчас СССР это украинцы. Украинцы это произносят Г как Х. У меня была такая проблема, что это была какая-то техническая. Он говорит, что это содержание в лахи. Я это уже знал всю технику. Я не знал какое-то содержание. А потом 10 раз а потом я попросил этого специалиста, ну хорошо, напиши, что ты хочешь. Он написал, это была мастер-контент.
Да, но
это было самое главное.
Переводчик не должен стесняться. Если есть такие проблемы, сразу поговорить с знающим и узнать, что это такое. А если он не будет, то он будет как-то как что-то говорит, а это не будет.
Нет,
то,
иногда некоторые это говорят это не при синхронном, при последовательном переводе. Не дают перерыв.
Да,
Тогда
как раз об
это
этом
переводчик.
я только говорил, два вида. Но вот когда есть последовательный перевод, то, понимаете, есть разные люди, есть какой-нибудь, скажем, новый человек первый раз выступает, то он
Да.
сам волнуется, и он хочет быстро-быстро все.
Быстро, все.
Тогда проблема бывает.
Нет, это одно и еще одно. Если вы работаете в какой-то организации, да, допустим, председатель или директор этой организации, думаю,
Да.
что все те, которые слушают, они его это подчиненные. И он говорит, как будто, и он не обращает внимания, что там есть это гости, которые не понимают английский язык. И
Да,
там
да.
переводчик не должен стесняться, даже если он давайте перерыв.
Да, но правильно. Нет, если вот такие трудные обстановки появляются, то переводчик не должен стесняться. Он
Да.
даже подойти к этому спикеру, и надо сказать ему, пожалуйста, сэр, так делайте, пожалуйста.
Да.
Да, не надо стесняться, потому что это в его пользу тоже, не только в пользу переводчика.
Нет, и еще иногда получается такие, что если вы работаете в какой организации, там идут какие-то коммерческие или ценовые переговоры, тогда ваша организация хочет, чтобы переводчик говорил то, что он хочет.
Да.
Значит,
Да,
не слова,
бывает
не
так
слова,
тоже.
а мнение. Мнение.
Да.
Это,
Да,
конечно,
да.
мы столкнулись с такими ситуациями. Тогда нам пришлось им сказать нашим руководством, что мы переводчики. Наше дело то, что он говорит. Но
Конечно.
наше дело не то, что почему он говорит. То, что он говорит.
Да,
Да,
верно. Спасибо
правильно.
большое. Профессор Мита Нарайн тоже хотела.
Хорошо. Ну, здравствуйте всем. Конечно,
Привет, Мита, привет.
да. Здравствуйте, уважаемый профессор Кумар. У меня, конечно, да, очень много хороших, да, воспоминаний. Вы как преподаватель, вы как руководитель, вы как гид. И, конечно, мы очень высоко оцениваем эти дни, с которыми проводили с вами.
Я
дело
только, как говорят, я только свою работу выполнял.
Да, все-таки, да.
И, конечно, желание такое было, чтобы я нормально и хорошо выполнял свою работу.
Ну, спасибо вам. Да. Но дело в том, что как преподаватели мы преподаем курсы по переводу, да. Это преподавание, это одно дело, и переводить, стать переводчиком, это другое дело.
Конечно.
Но, конечно, быть хорошим переводчиком надо, да, практика. И все не получают такую практику. Ну, как вы считаете, да, или вы предлагаете, как можно еще получше преподавать курсы по последовательному синхронному переводу? Конечно, как вы уже знаете, мы это делаем через предложения, через слова, которые мы делаем, и студенты это переводят во время занятий. Но это очень мало, да? Поэтому какие нюансы последовательного синхронного перевода вы предлагаете, чтобы улучшить наш метод преподавания?
Не, у нас, конечно, у нас есть, то есть, условия, которые помогут нам, то надо практиковать так. Действительно, вы говорите студентам, сначала вы преподаете перевод, устный перевод тоже, как преподается везде. И когда вы думаете, что студенты уже накопили опыт, и они могут переводить синхронно, то надо, вот я думаю, что надо сделать так, что надо делать? Надо, вы выступаете, как, скажем, преподаватель выступает как ну, как скажем, выступают на конференции, и там он тоже просто переводит как синхронист, и надо записывать все это. Надо записывать. И когда, конечно, для студентов сразу не будет так хорошо. Практика нужна, и практика нужна без перерыва. В смысле, без перерыва значит в неделю 2, 3, 4 раза. И когда вот вы выступаете, как будто, скажем, на конференции, и в одном классе какой-то студент переводит, и вы записываете это тоже. Опять вы выступаете с таким же содержанием, и другой переводит. И эта запись, это тоже надо сохранить. И потом на следующем классе вы, конечно, вот, даете им их перевод и говорите, вот видите, где ошибки есть, скорость нормальная есть или нет, фонетика хорошая или грамматика хорошая или нет. Я думаю, таким образом, конечно, на это требуется время, и время то есть, я думаю, время, то нет хватки времени, поэтому таким образом, если это делать, то я думаю, что раньше, вот, понимаете, мало времени было дано на перевод синхронный. Чуть-чуть больше времени надо давать, чтобы они могли, вот такой эксперимент вы делали, вы выступаете, и другой, то есть синхронист, переводчик.
Да, да.
Если это последний этап, сразу вначале он не стал, но может стать синхронистом. Сначала перевод, последовательно это будет, потом другой будет, потом скорость будет, конечно, повышаться. И когда вы даете им, вот смотри, как ты переводил, где ошибка, скорость хорошая есть или нет, что ты пропустил, что неправильно. Вот таким образом, я думаю. Но на это требуется время, конечно. Но время есть, я думаю. Так что если такую практику внести в нашу программу, то мы, конечно, все не могут стать синхронистом. Все студенты, не каждый имеет свои слабости, свои различные проблемы. Но если из группы хоть 1, 2, 3 выпускаем мы, то это будет хорошо.
Да, потому что дело в том, что сейчас не все переводчики, но все люди, хотя преподаватели или вот врачи, или все из разных профессиональностей, все связаны с переводом, с переводческими деятельностями. Поэтому...
Нет, понимаете, вот здесь в нашей стране не так все организовано. Но если вот кто, конечно, будет работать в больницах и других местах, и он должен пройти специальный курс для этого, понимаете?
Да, вот именно, да.
Специальный курс для этого. Конечно, он может вызубрить имена медицины и все это так, но как там поступать, как обратиться с людьми, с врачами и так далее, надо несколько классов, может быть, даже 1 семестр даже.
Да.
Даже. Только тогда мы можем подготовить таких людей. А просто так он знает русский язык, английский язык, но везде, в каждой области есть свое. В каждой области есть свое. Там, как вы должны выступать, что должны запомнить, что надо обязательно. Это там конкретно все, понимаете. Если он ошибку сделает, это большая катастрофа может пройти. Поэтому вот, на это много времени надо потратить и подготовить таких людей. Так у нас до сих пор не бывает. Но если кто ходит, то должна быть отдельная группа для таких. которые будут работать в больницах и так далее. И после того, как они начали работать, и всякие эти места, они могут послать таких людей. Это может быть специальный курс для них. Но, к сожалению, у нас не понимают все это, понимаете? Они взяли кого-то, в России был, возьми. И вот такое отношение к этому делу. Но это специализация, понимаете? Он должен знать именно медицины, всех медицин, так, врачи, какие болезни бывают, как все это. Немного такое знание, но, конечно, те, которые то есть собирается стать доктором, то он должен знать. Если он в России получил диплом, то он должен знать, как здесь бывает все это. Поэтому он должен пройти подготовительный курс какой-то, тогда это поможет.
Какой-то факультативный курс.
Да. Тогда это может не долгое время, может 3 месяца и так далее. И так они будут подготовлены будут к этому своему делу. А то просто так в России тоже, знаете, не знаю, как сейчас, но в наши времена, то есть медицина не была на, как говорят, подъеме, но вот и английского, наши студенты, которые там учились, ни английского знали, ни русского знали. Такая была обстановка. Потому что там послали им по разным каналам, вы знаете. Если некоторые, которые Компартии принадлежали, их там давали, то первое время в Советском Союзе. Но сейчас тоже не, то есть, как сказать, самые интеллигентные студенты не едут в Россию, они едут в другие страны, где на английском языке преподавание происходит. И поэтому сам врач, который вернулся, то он должен подготовить себя. Только тогда все будет нормально. Не так ли?
Хорошо, да, поэтому еще вот преподавание вот теории перевода, да, нюансы теоретических материалов играет очень-очень важную роль, да, как должен...
Конечно, конечно.
Да. Надо, если, типа, да, если у вас время, вы должны это все писать, да, для будущих, да, как делать перевод, да, как стать хорошим переводчиком. И, конечно, это будет как гид для всех студентов, для нас. Спасибо.
Я больше люблю говорить.
Спасибо.
Следующий вопрос.
Всего доброго.
Спасибо.
Девасмита Малик хотела бы сказать, либо какой-то вопрос. Да, Девасмитаji, пожалуйста.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonu. Greetings, Professor. First of all, thank you so much, Professor Kumar. Immensely insightful listening to you. I'm Devasmita. I'm a Moscow-based journalist. We completely depend on interpretation for our reports and stories. My question to you is, even experts can make mistakes while interpreting. You just mentioned while answering Professor Naren that ошибка это могут быть большая катастрофа. So since interpretation is a continuous process, it cannot stop. If a mistake is made, what is the best way to damage control? Just move on? Is there any scope to correct? Thank you.
No, the best way is interpreter, if he has committed a mistake, he shouldn't let it go. He should say, sorry, I have to tell you again. Like this, you know, if he doesn't stop, then the train has gone. He cannot do anything, you know. So it's better, nobody, if any of in our life also, if we commit mistake and we immediately understand this is my mistake, we say, sorry, I had to say differently. So it is like this. So that spirit should be there, you know, or usually the starter, sometimes people say, oh, if I will say, then people will not like it. Nothing doing. If I have committed a mistake, I must accept it and I must tell that this was not correct. Correct is this. Sorry, please, sorry for the disturbance, but this is like this. That should be the attitude, because because when you are doing usually the synchrony period, when you are doing so simultaneous interpretation these are not for everyday thing. These are for important conferences and other things. So those things are very important. On this depends the fate of some new program, something. So if we commit mistake, we should accept it then and there and correct it. That should be the attitude, One shouldn't say, if I do it, then people say he's not a good interpreter. That's not. If you do it, then you are a good interpreter. Otherwise, you are not. That's my feeling.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Bhargav Mitra ji, please unmute your mic.
Sir, I have a very small point about Professor Kumar about simultaneous interpretation, synchrony period. Now, when the synchrony period is done, at times we are not in the room, you are in a booth.
Yes.
And when you are interpreting, your voice lead goes to the listening party.
Right.
Not to the party which is talking. If I'm interpreting, then the Indian delegation is listening to, or when the Indian delegation is saying something, the Russian delegation listening, is always the recipient party. In case there is a mistake in my interpretation, then there is no way that I can alert the speaker because he does not get my feed. My feed is to the recipient. So I have no way to apologize for anything. So I have done simultaneous interpretation, and you guys are fantastic in the field.
No, the point is, if the interpreter has committed a mistake, only he can correct it, Only he can correct it.
You know it inside your heart.
Everybody knows it. Yes, a good interpreter knows he has slipped. He knows, a good interpreter knows, oh, I have slipped. So immediately there is no harm saying, sorry, I did a small mistake and this is what it is. Like this, he should immediately. No third party can do it, Third party can only criticize. Oh, look, this fellow committed a mistake. Doesn't matter. But because we have to give, we have to be, we have to give the true facts, not a wrong facts. So from the audience, if somebody feels somebody's and he gives some kind, he will not shout, of course, but he will show his face or something like. But when you are in the booth, you don't see all those things because you don't see from booth interpretation. In big, if there are big conferences, it is from booth. And so booth, of course, if a booth is nicely made, then you can see also the hall. Otherwise, at places you don't see the hall also. But the best thing is, if I have committed a mistake, only I can correct it, nobody else. And if you correct it, nobody will say, oh, this fellow did a mistake. Nobody will say, because you are giving the true, the true translation of this, of the other language. So but interpreter has always to remember this. If I have committed a mistake, time is very late. Immediately I should say, sorry, I didn't do it rightly. I'm doing it is like this.
We fully agree with what you're saying.
Because what happens, excuse me, what happens, many people think, those who are not very, not expert or anything, some people say, oh, this fellow committed a mistake. We don't have to bother about that. As an interpreter, we don't have to bother about. We have to bother about ourselves only, whether I am doing the job nicely or not. And if there is a small mistake, we correct it then and there, so that there is no loss of information.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Because our aim is to pass on the information.
At the same time, Professor Kumar, it may be appreciated that these things are much easier when you are having a consecutive interpretation, not simultaneous. When you are sitting in the same room one or two предложения, then you interpret. If there is a mistake, then you correct it. We have also asked the officer to speak a bit slower. I mean, this is a very general problem. If somebody speaks for 20 sentences and he will expect the interpreter to finish it off. So what I used to do that
No.
but just
There,
very
yes,
small,
this is
very
the problem.
small. I'll just
This
make
is
a
the
very small
problem.
point.
And their interpretation with all this thing, there are some people go on. What you are doing, he has to utter out two sentences, 3 sentences. Okay, our long-term memory can keep it for that, for half a minute or so. If he goes on, he doesn't pay attention. He's being translated. His speech is being translated. So we have to stop the speaker, please.
I'll just cite an example for you. I'm here, all those who are listening to this, because we have done professional interpretation in our office, in the Prime Minister's office. No, I'm not divulging any state secret to you guys, but there was an occasion when an officer who was talking about counterterrorism to another very senior guy from the other country, and I was much young at the time.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah,
the video has stopped.
Yeah, because your network at your side is low. So let's just stop the video. You may continue, please.
Pardon?
Okay. So what happened? He spoke 20 sentences.
Right.
And see, it is impossible to do 20 sentences at one go in hand.
Of course.
So what I did is that I interpreted the gist of it. Is it good enough?
No, you have, one has to politely.
So I'll just, Professor Kumar, I'll just finish this part.
Yeah.
I interpreted the 20 sentences into 4 sentences or 5 sentences, and I never lost any meaning of it. Fine. Then naturally, if there is somebody speaks 20 sentences, and if the interpretation is of only 4 sentences, in 4 sentences, then actually the person starts feeling that I am not being fully interpreted. So when he said, "Ho gaya aapka interpretation?" "Haan sir, ho gaya." I told my chief who was sitting on my right, sir, "Sir, काफी लंबा है." Then he told him, हिंदी में उन्होंने बोला उसको कि आप जो है थोड़ा कम बोलिए, 4-5 sentences बोलिए, otherwise बहुत मुश्किल होती है.
बिल्कुल.
Next time, instead of 20 sentences, he spoke 15. That's the only concession he made to me. So I again stuck to 4 sentences and finished that off. So then, he came down to 4 sentences or 5 sentences, which is okay. So there, I was in a position to control the situation. But when you are in a synchrony period,
nobody else will control. Only we have to control that. Either if he is going on speaking, then we have to give him some indication to stop, and then he will stop. If he is good one, he will stop.
Yeah. I'm requesting the host. Is there a technical reason that the video has been stopped?
It is because the bandwidth at your side is low and your voice was distorting.
I see. Okay.
So that's why I stopped the video.
I'm finished.
So that your voice could come.
I'm finished for now. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks.
All right. You can now start the video.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Есть у нас другие вопросы к профессору Kumar. Do we have other questions to Professor Kumar? I think no. So okay.
Слушатели устали, да?
Вот Нилимаji, у него есть вопрос. Нилимаji, please unmute your mic.
Пожалуйста.
Здравствуйте, профессор.
Здравствуй, дорогая.
It's so nice to see you and see everybody. One thing good about Corona is that we are able to see each other, and which normally we don't do otherwise.
Yeah. Corona has troubled us all through, and how long it is going to trouble us, we don't know.
Yeah. So I will actually kind of, give few of my experiences in interpretation, which I did when I used to be much younger and straight out of JNU, or maybe while I was in JNU. And yes, it was very difficult. And sometimes even, you know, our morals used to be very down. For example, there was one conference in Karnal, which was a Soil Salinity Institute, where
I
they
see.
were like, there were scientists who had come from Russia, you know, Russia, and then there were like scientists who were there in Karnal working, and maybe all across the India, and they were presenting their paper, and it was supposed to be Synchronny Perevod.
I see.
And the entire subject of water table, salinity, and this and that, which perhaps we normally also may not understand, you know, how it affects the production and yield and all those stuff. Scientific paper. So normally first session is like when you have greetings, and after greetings, you know, then maybe one or two papers, and then the next session after lunch. But in one of greetings was fine, but we could manage that. But the moment it started with first paper, obviously it was a big, you know, fiasco. So how do we deal with, because then one scientist came to us and said, in the lunch, he says, you're finding it very difficult. You don't know anything, or something like that he'd mentioned.
No,
So,
always, you know, when you are going to do interpretation for a subject which is not yours. So
yes.
basically, the science. So we have to tell, as a good interpreter, you have to tell the organizer, please send the topic of your this
Sir,
thing,
absolutely
and
right.
plus,
We did
and,
tell
and,
them.
and not only that, and if possible, send the papers which are going to be read there,
Yes,
you know.
you're right, sir. So you're
So once,
absolutely right. We did tell them much before, but I think it's, we all know how it happens. Interpretation suddenly jumps to you. And when we tell them, please give us, no, it's okay. You'll be there,
no,
and it's okay.
they don't understand the meaning of
They don't
interpretation.
understand.
They
Yes,
think, oh, interpreter knows everything, he will do
yes,
it.
yes.
Or and some of those, you know, they are not very serious. They say, okay, look, put somebody and we'll tell the other party we have a young interpreter, something like that. And because they are not able to pay much to a fine
Yes,
interpreter.
yes,
That is the reason
yes.
I'm telling. In
That is the
India, that
reason.
is the reason. Because, you
So,
know, if you want a good thing, then you have to give price for that also, no? So
yeah.
they want to skip. They want to just say, we have an interpreter. That's all. That is the attitude of some of our people here, you know.
Yeah. So this was
So
one of the
that case,
incidences.
no, that case, if it is if it is Pasled Vachilni Piribod, you have to stop the speaker also, you know. If he's going, he should at the most 3-4 sentences, all right. He can't go one page and then he thinks the interpreter will interpret that, because it is not possible for human brain. There is a short-term memory, there is long-term memory, and the long-term memory also you can't keep the memory of the entire book. It is not possible. So we always even now when we go, we put out conditions. This is this thing. You have to give us these informations and these things. And if possible, you give the copy of the papers also. If not all, at least 75% speakers, this thing you give us. Then if you do that, then we will do. If you don't do these things, then thank you very much. They do it. Then they do it, you know.
Yeah, the first day lunch was basically I had to gobble all the terminologies, because instead of going for lunch, I went and asked for the papers. And then I sat with one helpful Russian. I said, please tell me what is this in Russian, the vice versa I'm
Naturally, you
talking
know,
about.
and I think
So,
now our people now they had realized the good organizations, you know, our state organizations, you know, they earlier they were also not very careful about it. Now they are doing it because once they ask us to, we have this thing, we have to, then we give this thing. These are our requirement. You send it, then we will do. If you
so
don't give this thing, then don't expect us to take part.
So my raising this, of course, I just gave one of the instances, was only one thing, like, can we not have a kind of an association of interpreters or translators, in sense of where we have major universities and the colleges which are grooming or which are basically teaching, and then subsequent grooming of students or the interpreters or the translators into a particular field so much? Because you did
No, I
mention
mean,
that we should have a
you
stagirovka.
are right. You are right, because those universities which are running the courses of translation interpretation, what they should do, they should during the course of the say at least one full semester is required for this, not only one semester, if they want to prepare somebody for simultaneous interpretation, minimum two, and two intensively also. And in that process, there may be professors there who are teaching, who may not be translators, just a language professor. So they cannot do that justice because they themselves don't know it. So what they should do, really, they should invite some experienced interpreters to speak to them, tell their teachers, do this way, and then talk to the students also, so that both understand the importance of interpretation and requirement of interpretation. I think that is the only way out.
In fact, the third point which I want to really raise is from my corporate experience into this, that if at all we want this market to stay, like for example, we all study for our own, satisfaction, we can say, but also
Right.
to earn our bread and butter. So if we are really interested in having this market of interpretation and translation, then we really have to have some kind of organization into it, because my experience, especially of Chinese, with Chinese companies and with Chinese I've seen is, like, they have started teaching their marketing, international marketing person, business development
Yes.
person, English. They no longer rely on anything like when they come to India that they will be having somebody to kind of negotiate and all those. They don't believe in that. And similarly in Russia also, perhaps they will start doing it. So
No, Russia also has now interpreters, very trained interpreters they have.
yes,
uh,
yes, yes.
because China, Russia, and they will not have 100% faith in you.
Yeah.
Those countries.
No, so what I'm saying is, either we get up here now, or else we are giving it out. The whole concept, the thing of having a very a department which is going to run for 6 months or only on this
You
particular
are
course.
right. There
Not
should be
that.
there should be really a department which specialize in it, and they should train the interpreters. Not everywhere. It is not
This
possible.
is my request to Ranjana ma'am also.
Yeah, there should
That
be this
sooner the
thing.
better.
No, there should be a separate department, especially for this, and then not necessarily they have to have so many professors for that. They can, like we are talking today, people they can invite experienced interpreters to talk to the students, deliver a couple of lectures and other things, and their own teachers. They can. It will be good for them also. They can also learn little more, and only book reading doesn't help. Sometimes you have to communicate with people from the field. That gives you more strength than just reading and reading the book all the time. That is my view. And so that kind of this thing, the only thing is now um, slowly interpretation thing is going down, because you say China, they prepare their own people in English language. Russia also has now many people who know English very well, but still they cannot make it 100%. So interpretation is required, and uh, our people also, our country also, for each country will like to have its own interpreter, because of so many reasons, including political, because we should know what the other one is saying. So
Right.
that is also a diplomatic thing. very sweetly done. And they, if we are doing interpretation, their own people are also listening to it, what we are doing. We are giving the fact as fact, not saying something else. So those things are there. But only thing is ki for this purpose, there should be a intensive training. There should be in the universities a separate department for this purpose, and it should be really taken seriously. And those who are going to get into this field, they should not they cannot depend only on this, because there is no so much requirement in the market. So only teachers can do it, Russian language teachers can do it. It cannot be a separate institute of interpreter, very difficult, because if so many people go, can you give them job? It's not there. So इस तरह से जो our departments are there, they should make a section and train people like this. Then I think we'll be near the goal.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you.
That
Thank
is
you
my
very much
Thank
for
you,
the
sir.
insightful
Thank you.
ideas. And thank you, sir, for the solutions and answers. So actually, we are running
Okay.
out of time. So, but
Okay, thank you. I'm very
we have
happy
actually the
also.
thing is that we are having 100 participants here, but there are many colleagues who are watching you on YouTube. Live session is going on there on YouTube. So there are some questions like I will take just one of the questions. The
Please.
question was from Dr. Upendra Kumar, who
Right.
asked like how to interpret the cultural aspects. Like sometimes like in speech or talk or text, you get some cultural words which are not just, if you just translate, will not convey the complete meaning. How would you translate in that particular period?
The point is, when you are interpreting and you have to interpret, text related to culture. So first of all, has to acquaint yourself with the culture of the country whose language is being interpreted now. There is no other book, which you have to, your general knowledge about that thing should be enough. You should be acquainted, like if we are doing, Russian to English. So about Russian culture, we should have some knowledge ourselves. On the spot, we cannot do anything. And it cannot be a Daslovny Perevod, because if you know if you are acquainted with the culture of the country whose language is being interpreted, so you will be at ease, You don't have to do word-to-word translation, which is not correct most of the time. But you will be free to frame your own phrase to pass on that message, cultural message. So for that,
So just
this
for example,
job is
sir,
a
if
very
you,
difficult job, to be a very good interpreter, you have to know all aspects of the society, of the language, society whose language is being translated. That makes your job very easy, Otherwise, we have to guess another thing, and in simultaneous, there is no time for guess. You don't have any extra time. So you have to acquaint yourself with the culture of that country before becoming a interpreter. You must know. I mean, you cannot be 100%, but at least you should have broad idea about the culture of the country. That is the only answer. There is no other way, according to me. Where is the other way? No other way.
yes, sir. Actually, sir, just like we'll just take a brief question, last question from Anjani Kumar Das ji. Anjani ji,
हाँ
please
जी, अंजनी जी को
put your question.
Pranam sir, I am Anjani from
प्रणाम
Moscow.
बहुत प्रणाम nice
Sir,
seeing you Anjani.
yes, good morning to everybody. I have very small question. Just I will take 1 minute because I am very lucky that Professor Kumar has taught us the translation, and I very much remember whenever there was any summit took place and he was in the next class, immediately he was coming in the class with the cutting of that newspaper and telling us to translate it and synchrony perivod. So I am very lucky to have Professor Kumar, who has taught us synchrony perivod, translation, theory of perivod, and a lot of things, and we are lucky for them, lucky for this thing. And second thing, I will say a small, during the Prime Minister Modi visit, and Professor Kumar and Professor Charanjit have done a fantastic job of synchrony perivod. And all the Russians, I was just sitting beside one Russian lady who has highly appreciated that the translation was so superb that they can't believe it. Sir, one small question. As you remember the specifics of our Prime Minister, sometimes he speaks in Hindi, English, and sometimes some of the quotations in Sanskrit also. So how much it is becoming a challenging job for interpreting for him? Thank you, sir.
No, it is definitely a challenging job, Not say Hindi, English is all right, but when you quote from Sanskrit, so Sanskrit, if your general knowledge is good enough, then you can make out something out of it. Otherwise, one has to. It is very difficult for Prime Minister to know their staff. They will never tell you. They don't know themselves. They will sometimes Prime Minister. He remembers some things and he comes and speaks about that. If there is a written speech, that's a written speech is also not given to interpreters. No, it is not given to anybody. So there you have to, if you have little knowledge of Sanskrit, that will help you. Even little knowledge of Sanskrit. But those who don't have any knowledge of Sanskrit, for that it is difficult, So instead of doing wrong translation, one can skip it. That's all. And if somebody asks, then say, I don't know Sanskrit, how can I do it? Simply like that. Instead of doing something wrong, it's not to do it. Or if they have written this thing, text, and where there is some Sanskrit, so before the interpretation starts, one can ask if it's only Hindi language, or is there any Sanskrit proverb or anything? If it is there, please give it. And tell very quietly, give it. If you give it, we will translate that. If you don't give it, we cannot. That's all. Because one has to be honest about these things. Because there is no fun translating a Sanskrit proverb or something which we don't know. If we have some idea, then we can do it. Otherwise, we should not touch it. That is my feeling,
Right.
And one can also say it's in Sanskrit. One can be said also it's Sanskrit. I don't know Sanskrit, so I cannot do it. That's all. Because we have not been invited to translate Sanskrit, We have not been invited to do that. So you can politely say, this is Sanskrit thing which is unknown to me. That's all.
Dr. Sonu Seni, Mr. Bhargav Mitra wants to ask something, I think. Please unmute his mic.
Please.
And we have other speakers also, so please keep some questions for our others. They will also share their experience.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Professor Kumar, information which is an insider's information from the PM's office is that whenever the Prime Minister desires to speak something which is in Sanskrit, normally the interpreters who are working with the Prime Minister, like the current interpreter who is working with the Prime Minister, she is a foreign service officer. And you must have seen that lady interpreting to the Prime Minister every year. She would be some verses in Sanskrit so that she is able to keep them ready, because it will be very awkward if the Prime Minister speaks something, he would understand that this is not being interpreted at all. Now, that is an embarrassment. So I'm sure the Prime Minister saw. That's what you are right. This is the information that I have received. I have not faced a situation, though I have done Hindi to Russian interpretation. That's a different challenge for the Home Minister.
Then I think when Prime Ministers go, his speech, everything is known beforehand, because he has on the spot, if he says something, it's very rare that he will say, or any Prime Minister will say.
Usually, so sir, when the Prime Minister speaks at a structured forum.
No, usually what happens, when speeches are prepared for a prime minister and other dignitaries, if there is a Sanskrit, shloka there, so usually it is there itself in the text itself is said, as the Sanskrit shloka says this, and which is in Hindi like this, it is given there itself, and
Sir, we have been,
that solves your problem.
you're absolutely right. I have the honor
Because
of
not everybody else knows Sanskrit, so they a good,
I have a small submission here, sir. I mean, I'm quite honored that I have been associated with the Prime Minister also. But keep these things to yourself. This is a huge forum, but doesn't matter. This is professional. And we
usually,
know that
Prime Minister's speech, it's a very important thing, very important. And those who prepared the speech, so they also know their own people, not all of them know Sanskrit, interpreters apart. The listeners, they don't know it. So they themselves, usually a good the story writer his speech writer, he will definitely say, which in English means this, So that
the rules of the game are very clear here. When you are preparing the speech for the Prime Minister, then there is an unwritten law which is followed by the PMO, that they take the interpreter into confidence, and they also show the speech. Like if he is speaking as Rashos, Shanghai Cooperation Organization or any United Nations, then the speech is also shared with the interpreter. The interpreter, like from our side, he or she knows in advance what the Prime Minister is going to speak on. And if there is something, if he from the text, which he normally doesn't do when it's a structured kind of gathering, usually Prime Minister doesn't depart from the text. Sir, I'll just take half a minute to finish it. I'll just take half a minute to finish my...
Please.
Is speaking at a structured conference, he does not depart from the text. He sticks to the text. He departs from the text when he's making political speech. And then, I have somebody in action which is brilliant, interpreting the political speech of the Prime Minister and Amit Shah. That is something which is a different league altogether. But normally when the structured speeches are drafted or when they are presented to the interpreters, there is no change. If there is a change, then we indicate to the interpreter that there could be a Sanskrit, and he'll just insert it somewhere. And this is what he would speak. So that if somebody does not know Sanskrit, that should not come in the way of a very serious interpretation, because you cannot interpret that Sanskrit words. So it is given to the interpreter and kept in readiness. Whenever the Prime Minister inserts it, he or she has a text and he or she goes off.
Definitely. Because Prime Minister's speech is not an ordinary speech. Each and every word and sentence is noted and everything. And usually Prime Ministers and big dignitaries, they don't move away from this thing. If they move away something, that is very simple, which everybody will know. Otherwise, they don't do these things, Very good meeting. Enjoyable. Long time.
Yeah, it is really wonderful.
Really. I'm so happy. Thank you, and your colleagues, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Take care.
So, Kiran ma'am, over to you.
Yeah. Now we invite Professor Charanjit Singh.
Please.
Yeah, sir, please, you're most welcome. Please come and share your experience on the virtual floor.
Introduce Professor Charanjit.
Maybe if you
I like first. Okay. Yeah. Professor Charanjit has taught in Center of Russian Studies, School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies for more than 30 years, from 1986 to 2019. He's an expert of linguistics, syntax, semantics, lexicology, theory and practice of interpretation and translation. He did his PhD from Moscow State University, Moscow, Russia. Professor Charanjit Singh has a great contribution to the interpretation profession. He has done interpretation with the high-level delegates, heads of governments in different bilateral summits held in India and abroad. In G20 Brisbane Summit, the capital of Queensland, Australia, held in 2014. In the 8th Annual BRICS Summit and International Relations Conference held in 2016 in Goa, India. In Vibrant Gujarat Summit, India. St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Russia. Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. He has also accompanied our Prime Minister and other high-level government delegates for interpretation in many bilateral summits held in almost all Russian-speaking countries: Russia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and other CRS countries. He was one of the interpreters with Professor R. Kumar, with our, as you already know, with our Prime Minister during his visit to Russia in 2006. Professor Charanjit is one of the best teachers of Russian language and taught almost all courses which are taught in Center of Russian Studies at BA, MA, and MPhil level. Now I request Professor Charanjit to share his experience with us. Privetskую vas, Professor Charanjit Singh.
Thank you. I hope I am audible enough.
Yes, sir.
Am I visible?
Yes, sir, you're visible, sir.
Okay. All right. See, a few of the things which our colleagues have discussed with Professor Kumar. Just one issue regarding interpreting Modi. Most of the things have been.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Can you please move the camera a bit lower side, because your face is not coming completely.
You mean like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is now okay. Now okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, well, my experience tells me that interpreting is one of the easiest interpretation jobs that one ever has to do. One thing, as Bhargav also pointed out, the texts are shared in advance and in every case, except when there is a discussion where there is no text, there also, in fact, when we went for the Moscow summit with Professor Kumar, all the even confidential talking points and issues which were not even discussed, were likely to be discussed, were shared with us at my request by the requested the officials to give everything. So they gave us everything, even those things which were not discussed finally. And as regards whatever Sanskrit, those issues were resolved in the discussion, so I will not go back to them. Those things are always explained in the text itself. To make a issue short. Now, coming back to my originally prepared extempore speech. I was told by the organizers that one should start with how we got to doing this and what were the difficulties faced. Well, since there are two types of interpretation, I would first take simultaneous interpretation because that is what I mostly do, and then maybe come back to consecutive interpretation. So I got the chance. In fact, here also I would like to add to what Professor Kumar said. I think he may have started interpretation in the 70s, whereas I got this chance when there was a huge, festival of Russia in India, and there were 4 parallel sessions going on in 1988. That is when I was given the chance first time, and when I was in the economic and trade section. And as soon as I started, my colleague who was sitting next to me and even several other colleagues who were listening to me, they all thought that I was doing a really good job of it. And as they said, I had a natural flair for it. And of course, I know that I was able to convey the entire meaning the first time of all the deliberations. But I knew that my uh, my speech did need more polishing because, as a first time job, one is a little bit anxious and in a hurry and, you know, so that of course comes with practice, and that is not something that I was worried about. In fact, because it was a large conference, many of our students were working in the hall for assisting the delegates, of which there were, hundreds at that time because it was a large conference. Since some of the senior ones were interested, I asked them to sit in the next booth and listen to the interpretation. Then they also went and listened to the opposite booth interpretation. And then they told me that I should teach them interpretation. So this is how I started, and the start itself was very encouraging for me, which also gave me the opportunity to keep on working. So does not mean that, of course, I learned, gradually how to polish that. But you see, since uh, in that uh, session and the subsequent sessions which I did over the 3-4 days that the conference was on, it was all live discussion. Nobody was reading prepared speeches. The real issue in interpretation comes with prepared speeches, which are actually the bane of interpretation. But I will come to that later. Having heard interpretation before, I got exposure to some of the things of what to do and what not to do. One of the things that I learned what not to do is that in the previous year, in 1987, there was a major World Writers Conference also held in Vigyan Bhavan, where writers had congregated from the whole world. And the main Russian guest there was the famous poetess Bella Akhmadulina. And, you know, my senior colleagues were interpreting. And to add to what Kumar said, he started in the 70s, but I started maybe about 15 years later, uh, not as he said we were doing together. There were many senior people who were doing with him before me. So another colleague was going to interpret Bella Ahmadulina's speech. You know what happens in such conferences is that uh, everybody else is speaking in English and interpretation is being done into Russian. That is not considered as important a part of interpretation because, you know, Russians will give you concessions for what they are hearing, and sometimes interpreters are not as conscientious and as serious about doing them. The most important part is when you are doing from Russian into English, where all the people who do not know the language are dependent only on you. So Bella Ahmadulina had, in fact, handed over a handwritten text in advance. And I was sitting in the booth along with my colleague when the interpretation was being done and listening to the whole thing. What I saw was that our colleague was trying to show as if there is no written text and live interpretation is being done. As a result, I thought that uh, some of the parts of the interpretation sounded very contrived to me. So it was a lesson even before I did simultaneous interpretation that these are not the things that you have to try. You do not have to try to be someone you are not. And your uh, job is to convey the meaning as has been amply brought out by what was said earlier by Professor Kumar. So this brings me basically to the attitude and what one is looking for in the process of interpretation. I also hear now, while I am interpreting, I do hear other colleagues and what they do while interpreting, and in the process I have a couple of, and of course my experience of working with the students uh, while I was teaching interpretation. Uh, these are uh, the two basic things which I think, I mean, at an elementary level, not going to all the details of what all is required for interpretation, because a large number of uh, things are required, but I will focus on these two basic things which could really help. Not, I don't mean here experts like who are, who have been engaged, or Shipra, or many others. I don't know personally Vitral Zalki, but uh, like he said, how long he has been working. And there are many others here who also have, I think, a very good amount of experience in interpretation. Nilima was one who was talking about it. So I'm not talking of them. Basically, if you are a beginner or even not exactly a beginner, but have some experience, then these are a couple of things that could be useful. So what is the most significant thing? That is the ability to hear and process speech in one language while you are talking in another. Yeah. So that requires a lot of practice, and there are, of course, lots of ways of learning to do that. Some of those things, of course, we were discussing with the students. So many of our students are also attending this, and they would remember those things. Uh, but anyway, this thing is acquired with a lot of practice. So what is the solution for a beginner or not exactly a beginner? That is, convey most by speaking as little as possible. Bhargav Mitra had also talked of it for consecutive interpretation, but I mean in simultaneous interpretation, what you focus on is not on words, but the essence behind them, and select the shortest route to expressing that meaning, that gist which you have derived out of uh, the speech by the original speaker. I will give a couple of examples of what you may hear uh, interpreters doing, even experienced interpreters, and what one could do instead. Some examples, what I heard recently at the negotiations for SEO, which are ongoing before pending the November summit, which is going to be held in India, since India is chairing, so India is holding a lot of negotiations. Now, let me give some of the examples. Now, a simplest example, the Indian side or somebody says, it is an important principle for us. Now, the interpreter says, это является важным принципом для нас. Now, you would say, fine, the interpretation has been conveyed. Now, my point is, you don't say является. Это важный принцип для нас. Now, what that does is you take away является and the endings in творительный падеж. What that does is that you have to think less about endings.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just please
क्या हुआ?
mute?
अभी सुनाई दे रहा
Sorry, it was yeah.
बीच में क्यों म्यूट क्यों हो गया था?
Sorry, done.
Chalo, anyway, doesn't matter. You can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you speak less, you have more time to hear. And in
Yes.
simultaneous
Sir,
interpretation, yeah.
one request, sir. Actually, there is low bandwidth at your side. Can we see you and audio clear in a clear manner? If we just stop the
And what is
video,
missing?
if we just stop the video, then sound clearer.
Okay, yeah,
Can we
yeah,
do that?
yeah, yeah.
Now you please carry on, sir.
That will help the sound, yeah, the audio, right? That's what
Yeah,
we are saying. Okay.
right, sir.
So, uh, so now I will take another example. All these are from current negotiations. Я прошу представителя Таджикистана проинформировать нас, согласны ли они с этой версией. Now, the interpretation that I heard was literal and the sentence was as long. What I would say instead, прошу Таджикистан среагировать. 3 words instead of the 12 or so words that have been used in the original. I'll take another example. Do you have any comments to add? Now, the interpreter added from one side, one's own side, я хочу узнать, есть ли у вас комментарии или замечания. What would be more appropriate in my view, which works for interpreters? Ваши замечания, пожалуйста. Now, we do not have anything to add. That is the response. We accept it as it is. So instead of doing all the words, what do you say? Niyat, priнимай. And that's it. You don't need to add anything else. Yeah. So another example. Now, this was being done by a Russian. The question is, can you hear me? The Russian says, вы можете слышать меня? Well, an Indian saying it is still okay, but a Russian saying it, because the correct expression would be вы слышите меня, even if the whole thing was to be said. I would just say слышно. That is one word instead of the 4 words used by now. And the next one is, если вы не можете слышать меня, this is what the interpreter is saying, то мы просим вас написать нам по чату. So this is all going on in Zoom. So I would say, and in fact, saying it, if the person cannot hear, does not make sense. So if one is to write, one should write, если не слышно, просим написать в чат. So, well, the long and short of what I said is that speaking less allows you to focus on listening more and processing more processing time. This also, which I had always been telling the students, that is, if you have a shorter word instead of a long word, select a short word, not a long word. Similarly, use abbreviations wherever it is possible, not full forms of known concepts, even if they are being used in the original. So for instance, in this micro, small and medium sized enterprises, you should say MMSP. So, so the Russian says, which уже подписан memorandum о взаимопониманиях. And the interpreter says, the memorandum of understanding has already been signed. I would never recommend doing that. The MOU has already been signed. So again, allowing for the time to focus on listening and processing. This is not to say that this is what you should always do. When feasible, you should do it always, but when not, when you have plenty of time, then you can give the full expressions. There is no bar on that from my side. My point is that you will be better served, at least in the initial and not so initial period, by minimizing your speech without compromising on the essence. So, uh, so why some of the interpreters are doing it? Well, so one reason is that it never occurred to them. That is one reason. The second reason is that they want to sound very proper. Now, you see, that is all very fine. You should sound very proper, but the versions which I have offered, uh, they do not compromise on meaning. So my point would be that the two examples where an interpreter tried to show as if it is live interpretation and not from written text, and these examples, I would say that instead of focusing on projecting what you are not, focus on conveying the essential. Uh, well, on what they will think, well, the original was so long and the interpretation so short. Don't worry, you are saving their time. Yeah, and if finally anyone asks, tell them that you have conveyed the essence and it will work for them. Yeah. So that was one of the points I wanted to make. Now, if we come back to the main issues in simultaneous interpretation, which I faced initially, that is, issues are always with prepared text. When the speaker has the text with himself and you don't have anything. Now, as Professor Kumar also and some other speakers also mentioned, people, in fact, nervous people who are reading out a prepared text and sometimes for lack of time go so fast uh, because they are nervous, they want to finish it off. And they don't give you any time, enough time for interpretation, then of course losses in uh, interpretation are unavoidable. So what I would say, there is a concept in interpretation, that is training the client. That is one of the jobs of the interpreters, is also to train the client in what are the necessary components of interpretation. That is, of course, it starts with the physical attributes, that is what kind of a booth they should take, what kind of an apparatus, the best and the most accepted apparatuses in the world are Bosch systems for interpretation. They have a large variety of features which are very, very useful. So, and there are several Chinese versions which sometimes compromise on some of the features. So, starting from the physical attributes of interpretation and requirements, uh, the more important part, as was already mentioned here, is that the written speeches, the background material has to be there. They have to provide. Far too often the interpreter and the agency are scared to ask the speaker or the organizer for fear of offending them. So some are high government officials and the agency just wants the contract and they want to somehow wade through it without troubling. But you see, so many foreign language speakers, Russians, Chinese, Koreans, Japanese, to mention a few, keep their dogs ready to hand over. And often no one asks them. I had this experience just last year when an agency told me we have been asking them for so many days. Those were the Koreans who were handing over the charge for the next chair to India, something on law. It was legal issues, and when they said they have not given, we have been asking. So I just because it was 3 hours before the start, the meeting was to start at 2 p.m. At around 11 o'clock, I just decided to ask the Koreans directly. They were all in the hall. So I walked up to the head of the Korean delegation, whom one could make out by the way others were referring to him. And the agency people tried to stop me. But I nevertheless went and asked. They immediately supplied all the materials for all the 3 days. Moreover, they put it in all the language booths. So then the agency guy asked me half in jest, क्या उन्हें भी आपने हमारी तरह डांटा क्या? So I explained to him then that these people are well aware of interpretation issues because they suffer if their speech is not interpreted, and that happens often with them because of the language barrier. So please don't hesitate, keep asking. So you have to tell the agency, you have to tell the organizer, and the interpreter himself must be bolder. And that will only help, not go against the interpreter, because finally you will be able to do a better job. Today, of course, the situation is much better compared to when Professor Kumar was doing, and for a long period in the previous century when I was also doing. Today, if you get the agenda, you insist on getting the agenda at least, then you know the topic, you know the organizers, then the internet will help you to fish out mostly all the previous deliberations on the issue which happened during the previous meeting, whenever that meeting was. And so and believe me, the proceedings will not be much different from what you have fished out. And then once you have prepared, you can ask them for the specific documents, talking points, whatever they have. Yeah, sometimes there are no prepared speeches. So that itself would suffice for you to get the vocabulary from out of that and prepare. And you should always prepare a glossary for every separate event. Never compromise on that. Now, so these are the couple of things that I wanted to say about simultaneous interpretation. Now, a little bit about consecutive interpretation, if you are still interested. Yeah, shall I go on?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So, consecutive interpretation, as you are well aware, is a very different kettle of fish. Whereas in simultaneous interpretation, you do not have to remember so much. And of course, what you really have to remember very well are figures. In consecutive interpretation, you have to remember everything. Therefore, the standard recommendation for consecutive interpretation is taking notes. So, luckily, of course, I have not used, I always scribble my own notation. But there are books on that. I also had a couple of books in Russian. I think they may still be lying in my office room, which is not my room for the last more than couple of years, but Dr. Ajay Karnatis, but he has been very kind to let me leave my books there pending, their disposal in different ways. Some I had promised to some universities, including Jamia Millia people. And then, of course, this lockdown happened and nobody is using the office, so we'll do that. So some of those books might be lying in the office in English. In English, there is a good book by Andrew Gillies, Note Taking for Consecutive Interpretation. So I think friends could consult those. I would say that from amongst the things that I use, some are that is use of arrows, an upward arrow indicating rise, increase, or growth, downward arrow increasing slip or a decline or a decrease, yeah, a backward arrow that is regress or come back, return, forward arrow, forward pointed arrow that is pointed to the right could mean hence or consequence or even future. I use it as future also. Depending on the context, you can make it mean anything in your notation. Arrow pointing in both directions can mean exchange or relations. Now, you see, this is one thing. And then some other notations for economy, you use econ. Then for energy, E. For policy, use the Greek pi, yeah, etc. And for being happy, etc. and being sad and other emotions, you could use the smileys and their main components, that is laughing lips or sad lips pointing downwards, etc. So now when you have done that and names of countries, for India, I just use a capital I, RF for Russian Federation, for Japan, one would use JAP, and then China, CH, etc. You can make your own notations. Now, there are ways of extending the meaning of these. So India dash, and it becomes Indian or Chinese or any other national, that is citizen of the Russian Federation, RF dash. So similarly, when you, the video went off. Similarly, when you underline these very things, then they start acquiring additional meaning. One underline would mean quite or somewhat. Let's say under the arrow, it will mean good rise. And if you put two, underline it twice, then means let's say astronomical rise or growth. Similarly with decline, return, etc., exchange or relations, and let's say some of the things that you say are very happy, very sad. Also under the smiley, you put that dash or two dashes, etc. Some of the other notations which I use is directions, north, south, east, west. Some Greek letters for different things, currencies. Then, of course, the all the chemical names in notation which are used in science, CO2, H2O, etc., CO, etc., and everything else. Now, words like assert or declare, now you use only say and you underline it, you are asserting. So poor, if you underline once, very poor. So, and if you underline it twice, it means extremely poor or proper poverty. Or if you underline it with a dash, then badly off, etc. So I hope you get the gist of it. That you have to make your own notation using some of these basic things, or you could consult and use the guides which are there on notation in consecutive interpretation. Well, I had also prepared one large sentence in Russian and how I would do the notation, but I think you get the gist, and I would stop here, and I would be happy to answer any questions if I'm able to. Thank you for attention.
Thank you so much for this interesting speech.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful talk on the aspect of interpretation. Maybe we can have questions or discussions. We request the participants to maybe raise virtual hand.
Let me just sum up. Yeah, what I have said is that use essence and brevity. Yeah, that is, be short and never. Of course, what is the essence? How do you get at the essence? I think I may have not talked about that portion. It is that every speech or every sentence or every expression has a similar kind of content, that is, who or what is or happened or transpired, and then the uslovia, в которых это происходит, that is, how, when, where, etc. So you could also make, some people recommend graded notation, that is, some in 3 columns, some in 2 columns. So you could grade them. Let us say условия, that is, обстоятельства, мы записываем в одном столбце, а суть, содержание, то есть события в одном, и так далее. So when you focus on who, what, that is the subject, then is, transpired, happened, etc. That is событие, то есть обычно выражаемое глаголом, and then of course условия. So you get to what is the most important thing being said. Sometimes the answer lies not in the main clauses, but only at the end in maybe a very secondary clause. But going by the context, you have to convey what is the most essential thing. Focus precisely on that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I have finished now. Sorry to interrupt.
Questions?
Yeah. Krishna, do we have questions on YouTube? Yeah, maybe Krishna was looking at the questions.
We have a question from YouTube. Should I read?
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
She is Parijat Bhattacharya. Her question is, what should an interpreter do if there is no equivalent in the target language? Should that part be skipped, or should it be replaced with a closer variant? Her second question is about speaking shorter sentences. Does it sometimes give the wrong idea to the audience that maybe the interpreter is not translated everything that was said? That's it, sir.
Yeah. Now, you see, when I said short sentences, I mean simultaneous interpretation, not consecutive. Yeah, because in consecutive interpretation, you have the time and you can, in consecutive interpretation, also, you see, some people, I mean, the organizers in the context that I mentioned and gave the examples for, the organizers are looking for the keywords, and if you give it to them, mostly there will be no issue. But one has always to go by the given context and the situation. You cannot take any formula as magic formula for all situations. Yeah. When I said you use MOU or MMSP, that is only for situations when you are sure that your listeners, being experts on that issue, are well aware of these terms. So, in other situations, you may have to, on the other hand, expand and give explanations. For instance, if somebody starts talking of Hathras, that Hathras mein ye hua, wo hua. Now you have to add a town in UP here and there, so that means you always have to add or subtract based on the requirement of the situation. That is one thing. Now, the second question is about the absence of, and now in simultaneous interpretation, the audience is listening only to you, not to the speaker. They can't mostly hear the speaker in 9 cases out of 10. So they are not even aware that you have said something shorter or longer. So I think that takes care of that question about being short. And as I said in my speech earlier, do not worry about what you look like to the audience. Worry about conveying the meaning and the essence. And if you have done that part sufficiently well, I'm not talking of the situation that Bhargav was mentioning when somebody is speaking 15 sentences. If I were there, I would not allow them. I would stop them myself. But anyway, I'm not trying to say that Bhargav should have done it. No, it depends on the situation, whether you are in a position to do it or not. Well, I mostly think that I am. Now, with my seniority, even the people who have retired are, in the SEO negotiations, all the bosses are calling me sir. So obviously my status is slightly different today. So it may not be the same for everyone in different situations. Talking of equivalents, obviously there is no question of dropping that. You explain that concept using other terms. And this issue of equivalence is not a very simple issue. It crops up all the time, and you always have to find a descriptive equivalent or something which is already acceptable, that is already the dictionaries accept that as equivalent. You have to use that. I hope it answers your question. Yes, I am done.
Yes, sir. Do we have other questions? Yes, sir. Krishna, do we have other questions on YouTube?
No, sir. That's it from YouTube. There is no other question.
All right. Thank you very much, Krishna. Devasmita ji wanted to say something, sir.
Yeah. Hi.
Devasmita ji, please unmute your mic.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sonu. Professor Singh, warm greetings. Absolutely delightful listening to you. Thank you so much. Nuances in interpretation is crucial for us journalists, as that sets the tone and provides us an angle for our stories. My question to you is about interpretation of humor, irony, sarcasm, and punchlines. it is said that an interpreter's ultimate challenge is interpreting humor. Do you agree? Or is it pretty straightforward? Thank you.
No, of course it is not straightforward. No, certainly not. But I must say that whenever such things have come up, somehow being well versed with humor and sarcasm in Russian and in English, and uh, I have been more or less able to do justice to the humor part. Now it's difficult to uh, give examples. Some of them are even unquotable. So I would refrain. What comes to my mind is not for public consumption. So I will refrain from doing that. But yeah, it can be done. Although yes, sometimes you have to convey, because sometimes there is a pun in one language. It is there. In the other language, the word does not have two meanings, and you will be hard pressed to find a similar word. Sometimes you can find, you can replace the word and which has two meanings and then convey. But sometimes you just explain that this is what creating the humor. I think these are the more challenging parts when a pun is only in one language. Then you do an explanation, and that still conveys. Right? I hope I conveyed, Devo.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Praneeth, please unmute your mic. Praneeth over here. Meanwhile, sir, Praneeth switches on his mic. I have actually a question, if you allow me.
Oh, who's this?
Regarding the technology part, sir.
Who's this speaker?
Sir, Sonu here.
Yeah, Sonu, since your image.
Yeah, sir, I have a question. Like generally, while you're doing like interpretation, you are given a booth and you have a lot of various apparatus over there. So does it like have you faced any difficulties like in the beginning, like operating those apparatus because you have to switch over the switches, various switches over there?
This is a common issue that sometimes you may forget to switch on or forget to switch off, or forget to toggle the language. It happens with all interpreters. Therefore, there is a person who is monitoring this, whether the interpretation is coming in a particular language or not. So if it is not coming, they would quickly come and toggle the switch or switch on. I also have often faced slightly different problem. That is, if your colleague who is sitting with you both is inexperienced or is not very tech savvy, then they tend to, fiddle with buttons, and that sometimes than what I. That's how it is. So obviously, they do have problems. I mostly never felt, because you go and study the apparatus, and now I know with the study and whatever I can do settings, I can do whatever is required. If somebody else doesn't know how to. That's it. I hope that's enough.
Yeah. Thank you.
I
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So Praneeth.
Hello.
Is,
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, Praneeth. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. So my question is, when we are interpreting and whenever we have a text that is the pre-decided text, as if in the conferences or in the political meetings, but how one should tackle with the speaker who will be speaking extempo? And sir, my second question is, you talked about the shorthand information tools in the form of making arrows up and down so as to restore the information. So is there any book or something guide is available that is internationally accepted for all these shorthand informations, or we have to make such notes with our own experience?
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
I did tell you that in Russian I have a couple of which I've never used, but they may be lying in my room in JNU, so I do not have access to their titles. These days it's not easy, it's not at all difficult to find if you just enter the topic and enter a word books, or not even enter that, some books will pop up. So one book in English which is well accepted, I already mentioned the title. It is called Note Taking for Consecutive Interpretation. So if you enter that on the internet, you will, a short course. It's by Andrew Gillies, so you can enter Andrew Gillies or you can enter the title of the book and you will reach it. Yeah. So there, of course, the issue of note taking is discussed in great detail. Not that I told you I use my own, very mostly I use abbreviated words and some notations, as I mentioned to you, and manage with that. Never had any problem, so I never resorted to studying these things in detail. But yeah, I've told you one book. For Russian, you can just go to the net and запись при последовательном переводе или запись последовательного перевода. If you enter something like that, I'm sure you are likely to get access to more than one title. There are at least 2, 3 that I have seen, and a couple I have in my own room. So you will be able to access them and use them. They of course follow a very, very detailed program. It takes some learning, right? But that's it. Thank you.
Dr. Sonu has shared.
Yeah, Professor Banerjee, you had some question.
No. I'm saying you have shared the link of that book. That is what I'm saying.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sonu is the, I would say, to use a non-standard phrase, tech savviest amongst us. So he does things on the go. So that's very nice. So everybody can access it now. Yeah.
Bhargav ji wanted to ask some question. Is he here?
Let me just find him. I think he was here. Yeah, he's here. Bhargav ji, please unmute your mic.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Professor Charanjit Singh. I think the points that you have made are very, very valid. In fact, the best part about your speech is that you cited examples on a real-time basis, on the real-life examples, which actually will help all of us to have a better appreciation of what happens behind the scene at times.
I hope that, even experienced ones, if they have not thought about these things, sometimes make this mistake. And I quoted from real life usage by interpreters who have years of experience, some of them. So I thought it could be useful.
My experience of now this technology has improved a lot these days, and the buttons have become lesser. So before a meeting is held these days, when you go into the booth, the feed that you are supposed to be speaking into, I mean, suppose you have the Russian feed, you are interpreting what the Indian delegation is speaking, and your feed goes to the Russian side. Essentially, that happens. When we are speaking in a simultaneous interpretation, then we normally interpret for our own delegation, which is from English to Russian. So the feed goes to the Russian side. So the system on the microphone is already set to the Russian feed. So we don't, that is explained to people, and nobody tampers with that. We just check it before we go into interpretation, that the feed is into Russian. So, I mean, in the hall also, you can check it out before the meeting. That's when the technology has, so there's no, the only thing is that, as Professor Charanjit Singh very rightly said, that as you start speaking, you have to switch on the mic, as we are doing it here. That you don't forget, I mean, once you're speaking, otherwise you won't be audible. And second is that the interpretation, what we normally do is very structured interpretation. Either it is political, or it is technological, or it is something to do with medicine or pharma. But we are never prepared for jokes. That is something which is very, very surprising. Jokes, shutki. No, Shutka is a huge challenge. Any Shutka is a challenge, The jokes in one country, they totally are different from the jokes of the country that they are coming to. Now, the Indian jokes are different, the Russian jokes are different, or something. Even among the Russian, the Central Asian jokes are different, the Russian, Belarusian jokes are different. Now, the interpreter is unable, at most of the time, he doesn't even understand what the joke is. Now, that is the worst situation that, one can face. You don't even understand what is being said. Now, you are interpreting. Now, at the end of your interpretation, your audience is supposed to enjoy and laugh. Now, that is the biggest challenge. If you cannot make your audience laugh, and by understanding the joke, then you are a gone case. So probably they will understand that you have not understood. Both the sides will understand that you are not understood. But this is something which I would definitely like to have the views of Professor Charanjit Singh on this. How you cannot prepare yourself for very native language words. We are not used to the typical native language words. What does an interpreter do? There's a lot of youngsters sitting here. They'll be required to undertake a lot of work. But this will always come up in a bilateral meeting in a hotel or a restaurant or wherever. Suddenly somebody will crack a joke and you're not prepared. How do you handle it?
Right. You have something else to say. Did you want to add something to what you said, or shall I reply?
I think he's just muted his mic.
Not here. Anyway, all I can say is that I can conceive of such a situation of what you are saying, but it just shows lack of exposure. So you have to have more exposure. If you have worked with Central Asia, then you have to acquaint yourself with that terminology. As I already said, personally, I have never faced such an issue. I would say even one more thing, that 90% of the jokes, I mean, I'm not negating what you are saying, are actually the same in every language. Now, for instance, there is this joke in Russian. Only I heard it, but I told once in Hindi. So let me recall this. There's some, Грузин идет к другу, который является инспектором полиции, и говорит: ну, слушай, мне нужны права, на вождение имеется в виду, помоги, ты же этим занимаешься. Он говорит: ты мой друг, разумеется, я сделаю для тебя. Но я же инспектор, я задам тебе один вопрос. Хотя бы, чтобы узнать твои способности вождения. Ну, говорит, пожалуйста, говорит, вот смотри, ты едешь по узкой горной дороге, справа ущелье, а слева горы. И только одна машина может проехать. А навстречу тебе идут двое женщины. Одна старая, другая молодая. Теперь мой вопрос. На кому давить будешь? Он говорит, ну, если выбора нет, старуху, конечно. Я повторю тебе свой вопрос и повторил то же самое. Там, слева ущелье, справа горы. На кому давить будешь? Неужели молодую? Послушай, будешь давить на тормоза. So на тормоза или на кому? Ну, конечно, это ошибочно сказано по-русски так не говорят, но, тем не менее, на хинди я перевел. बस ये हालत है तो किसमें दाबेगा तो and finally the answer is to break न दाबेगा भाई. So my point in telling this joke, although I may not have been able to make the audience laugh also, as you said, is that most of the jokes are common and universal in all the languages. Mostly they are borrowed from other languages. Somewhere one joke is created and others use the same one universally. I mean, that applies to more than 90% of the jokes. Now, if it is related to a language-related pun, then of course they will be limited to the area in which that language is spoken. And sometimes they are, они связаны с реалией, не той местности, тогда это местные. Но надо расширять свои знания и надеяться, что мы будем знать, о чем идет речь. Что я еще могу сказать? У вас свой опыт, у меня опыта пока такого нет. Да, я уже все сказал.
Then we have Ashish. Ashish. Ashish is one of our students here. Yes, Ashish.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Ashish.
Yes, Ashish.
This is our scholar, Ashish. Yes, Ashish.
It was nice listening to you, sir. After 5 years, we had wonderful classes for MPhil and PhD on various translation and interpretation subjects. So lately, I was in an interpretation assignment, and I was in a situation, just wanted to share with you and wanted to have some comments from you on what had happened. So I was interpreting for a delegation, like very high dignitaries. So one of our very senior officers, what he did was he takes out his mobile and he, in a certain situation, he starts reading out 8 to 9 lines of poetry of Bulle Shah. So that's a very typical situation which happened. So from my understanding of what the poetry was, I tried to interpret, like giving a gist and of what he meant to for the like the audience to understand. So I gave that meaning. So how would you react to such a situation, maybe?
Well, firstly, I would ask if you are not conversant with the language, because Bulle Shah is, although, Bulle Shah is Punjabi.
Yeah.
So if you are not, even I may not know one of the words,
yeah,
not to talk of you, because it was in the 17th century. So not to talk of a person who is not a Punjabi speaking person. So first thing I would ask is to ask that person to now convey the gist in Hindi or English, whatever, and then convey that. I would do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's exactly what happened.
Did that happen?
Yeah, yeah. I said that like this is Bulle Shah from 1680s, like 17th century poet. So that would be a bit difficult for me to understand. So me sometimes listening to Coke Studio and then understanding through subtitles gave me a hang of what the poetry was. But again the speaker he explained in English, and then I translated that into Russian.
So you found the solution. You always have to, you see, as I said, the interpreter should never be scared, of what the other person will say. No, no, you go according to the situation, and if you handle it, of course, you have to handle it tactfully, uh, which sometimes is missing in my case. Like, let me tell you a situation. I think I already mentioned it in class sometime. Uh, uh, a Kazakh guy, a very senior official of Kazakhstan, in consecutive interpretation, said something, started off the speech, and said, "Пожалуйста, переведите." He had not completed. So what I told him, because you give the environment of what is being said only with the main thing. So I said, "No, вы еще ничего не сказали." So he was really taken aback, and the whole audience laughed because actually what he had said was, only preliminary words which cannot be interpreted on their own. So, so that was tactless of me, but it conveyed the meaning, and then he continued, and then I interpreted. So sometimes, yeah, even at the cost of being tactless, which depends on the basic nature of an individual. Uh, you have to be not scared and convey, which you did. So there are no issues. You resolve the issue. Fine.
Which brings me to a point, sir. Sometimes it happens that we in India stay in a multilingual setup, and we might have speakers sometimes from maybe Bengal or Assam or Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, Maharashtra, who in who the speaker might in some typical situation might start speaking in, to share some emotion in his or her native language. So we as interpreters should actually ask them what the speaker wants to actually want the audience to understand, and then interpret it.
This, yeah, this happens also.
Yes, sir.
It happened to me in Germany. A guy who was supposed to speak in Hindi was actually speaking in Marathi. Now, till the time I could make out, I interpreted that. And then I gestured to him because I could see him from my booth to say it in Hindi. So, and in fact, I sent my colleague to him. Yeah. And she went and told him, "कि Hindi boliye." So, so that is how it was resolved. And it happened in another conference to me, uh, that a Czech was speaking in Russian, but he used some Czech expressions. I never minded because I understood what he was saying, and I did it. Uh, because, I mean, one is basically either, I don't remember the exact expression now, but either the words were similar or I knew them because I know some Czech, some Pol. I know for linguistic purposes I learned them. So I did it without stopping at all, into Russian, sorry, into English. And then later the Russians walked up to me and said, мы перестали слушать, потому что он заговорил по-чешски, а вы продолжали переводить и справились. Ну, вот бывает и такое. Так что, yeah, sometimes you may be able to understand because we also understand some Bengali words or some other this. If it's something simple, you may be able to understand.
Right, right, sir.
Otherwise, you have to give it a miss. It's not as if everything is always interpreted 100%. That also we have to keep in mind that in simultaneous, no, there are situations when somebody says something, you may not hear what the person said, or It may be something that you did not understand, or for some other reason, for lack of time, you may miss some of the things. That is a part of interpretation. There is nothing very abnormal about it.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good question.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Now we have one of our bright scholars, Amit Jagmola, who is there in US as a specialist in the
Before Amit
interpretation field.
speaks,
He has some question.
hello. Yeah, before Amit speaks,
Yes.
I in fact wanted to add this in the end that, relating to Mita's question, because she asked
Yeah.
about how to teach. And Professor Kumar's remark that at least 2 semesters are required, I wanted to share with the entire audience that our student Amit Jakhmola has been sent by MEA to the Middlesbury Institute of International Studies and is studying translation interpretation there for the second year. And uh, we do interpretation executive as well as simultaneous at a very, very low level because uh, of several constraints. One, the basic constraint is that instead of being an exercise in teaching interpretation, we are also teaching them Russian at a higher level because of lack of knowledge and exposing them to different subjects in Russian and in English, different areas. Now, since Amit is doing it there and we have been communicating, he has told me about some of the methods they use to create an expert out of you. So, of course, some of those things I have been aware of, but I would say that Amit is a much better person to tell us about the techniques that could be used for furthering one's knowledge at a personal level because as regards having a separate school, yes, in the last year of my uh, work at JNU, a group was formed from 5 languages to try and look into the possibility of creating a separate interpretation department where the general things would be taught and for every language there would be but that came to nothing ultimately because the ministerial support, I suppose, or maybe lack of initiative because I left in June, so that was already holiday time, but it petered out thereafter, most probably because of lack of support from the government. And without their support, it cannot be done in India. It cannot be done as an initiative of individuals. Yeah, so, but for raising one's personal level, yes, Amit Jakhmola, our student, would be a much better source. And I would suggest that maybe he would be asked to speak if there is time today itself, or maybe some other time to share the techniques being employed there for raising different types of linguistic and interpretation competence. Thank you. Yeah, now, Amit, sorry for interrupting. Now you may speak.
Yeah. Yeah, just before like Amit
Hello,
says,
sir.
sorry,
This is
Amit,
Amit.
we have already
Okay.
discussed
Okay, sir.
with Amit that we will be having another session of on the same area in which we have already requested Amit to be one of our speakers.
Well, so that's very good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Amit, please.
Yeah, sir. My question is about how do you render proper names, especially Chinese and Japanese name, while doing simultaneous interpretation? I know that there is a proper system of Russian English transcription where you can see how do you like the correct pronunciation for Chinese name. For example, the most common Shinzo Abe or Xi Jinping. These are the names, and but these are very common names, so everybody know how to pronounce them in Russian. But what about other names? For example, name of some writer. So how do you render these names, like the Chinese, German? Because there is a proper system, and it is possible to do it while translation, but during simultaneous interpretation, how would you do that?
I absolutely appreciate. Like Wuhan in Chinese would be Wuhan. Yeah, Wuhan.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's not a simple thing. So, if you don't know, you will have to do it the way you can. There is no choice. I mean, so, if you are reading a lot of Russian, yeah, and you come across such names and you make the effort to equate with them with the original and the English version, then only you will have complete success. Otherwise, it will always be partial. Yeah. So you are right. I mean, I have not really come across such an issue. I mean, we get to interpret very rarely. You see, unlike, let's say, a person like you who will be, plunging into it full time once you get the chance. We get to interpret very rarely, and I personally have not come across problem. But yes, you are absolutely right that this is a complex issue, and people dealing with that area, let's say who has to deal with China, you know, would have to make the effort to equate, yeah, and learn the whole table and learn the names and the etc. They will have to do that. That's all I can tell you. Maybe you can say something better on this. Maybe you have learned something. Is that so?
Yeah, sir. We have been told to go through that transcription table and try to, yeah, that is the only option, sir.
Yes, and of course read more. Let's say you read something of Chinese in Russian, then you match it with the table. So then you get a hang of the overall table. Yeah. So I think you
Yes, sir.
know the solution better than me. Right. Thank you for the question. Anyway, happy to
Thank you,
see
sir.
you. So no bubbles around, I see. Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
कोई नाई वाई नहीं मिल रहे हैं आजकल.
Sir, everything is actually closed. So like barber shop and everything. So
तो अपने नेबर से करवाना चाहिए एक दूसरे का.
yeah, that is a good option, sir.
No, no. So that's no issue. It just happened to me. Okay.
Okay.
Anything
Thank you very much, Amit. Thank you, sir, for answering the questions. I think maybe it's time to move on to the next speaker. Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful talk you have given. Of course, we always know that you not only give your talks, but you also cherish the students with your kind of jokes or kind of comic sense and all. You have a good sense of humor. That's why like people like your classes. Of course, we missed the chance, like we could not get the chance to get into your class, but through this one I'm very much delightful and very much enriched with your talk.
Anyway, you were lucky, Sonu, that you didn't have to go through it. So that's all I can say. But I want to just thank all of you. I think it was wonderful sharing and getting to learn from others, because teaching is basically a learning experience. So today was another chance for me, and since I've been out of it for more than a couple of years, it was a great pleasure for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Really interesting.
Kiran ma'am, over to you.
Out. Thank you, Dr. Sonu Saini. Our next guest was supposed to be Ms. Shipra Ghosh, but she's unable to come due to some urgency. But I would like to speak few words about her. We want our virtual audience, our participants, to get to know a little about her, as she's also one of the finest interpreters in India. Miss Shipra Ghosh did her MA in Russian, Jawaharlal University, New Delhi in 1985. She worked as a translator, interpreter in Ministry of Defense from 1985 to 1996. She worked as an attaché, Central Asia, Europe East Divisions, Ministry of External Affairs from 1996 to 2002. Then she was third secretary, then second secretary, political wing, Embassy of India, Moscow from 2002 to 2006. She was under secretary, then deputy secretary, Eurasia, Central Europe Divisions, Ministry of External Affairs from 2006 to 2016. From January 2017 till today, she's first secretary, PIC, Consular Political, Embassy of India, Tashkent. She's fluent in English, Russian, Hindi, and Bengali. She's, of course, well experienced in interpretation. I myself have seen and sometimes watched her hundreds of times, I can say, sitting with different heads of governments and doing interpretation. A wonderful interpreter, always in demand. As Dr. Sonu said, yes, she has promised us. He told me that he has promised us it will be a privilege when she will share his experience in our next webinar or workshop on translation and interpretation. We are eagerly waiting for you to share your insight and experiences, Shipra Ghosh ji.
Yes, like she promised to join next time, but could not join this time. We then ask our next speaker, Dr. C.V. James. Dr. James.
Yeah, I have a actually very long, I'll say, introduction or biodata, whatever, but I'll try to make it short. He's also well experienced. Dr. Chinnakadan Varia James. He is presently assistant professor in Russian on ad hoc basis from 19 September to 2007. 19 September 2007 to 25th May 2019, and presently he is guest faculty from September 2019 in Department of Slavonic and Finno-Ugrian Studies, Delhi University of Delhi. He has completed his PhD in philology from People's Friendship University, Moscow in 1991. What I remember is about him is his thesis was more than 500 words, because I have read his thesis. It was more than 500 words, a very big thesis. He did his Master of Arts also from the same university, People's Friendship University, Moscow in 1982, from 1982 to 1987. That was 5 years integrated course, and he passed with honors. He has done diploma in translation and interpretation from People's Friendship University, Moscow. It was from 1982 to 1987, 5-year part-time course. He has certificate in journalism, also from People's Friendship University, 1985 to 1986, 1 year. That was 1 year part-time course. Diploma in Russian, Cultural Department of the USSR Embassy, Delhi, 1 year part-time course, and he has completed 4 semesters of 5 years integrated program of MA in Russian language and literature from Jawaharlal from JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He was here from 1980 to 82. And he went to Moscow after obtaining the scholarship. Yeah. There are a few more things to, of course, there are many things, but I want to share some of his experiences. He has conducted workshops, RB Center of Education, 4 sessions of 15 minutes each of practical seminar on ease of learning Russian through explanatory grammar developed from system linguistics perspective. He has presented a number of papers in different international and national conferences. Then training courses and training workshops. He has participated in different training courses and training workshops. Then a written translation experience. He's having experience of approximately 33 years. And he has done general, business, scientific, and technical translation of oil and gas, petrochemical energy and energy efficiency, mining, mineral, metal, asbestos, information technology, transportation and logistics, railways, aviation, automobile and automobile components, pharmacology, medicine, biotechnology. Oh, it's a long list. Natural healthcare solution, archaeology, monuments, restoration, and it's a long list, and so on. Conference interpretation experience, consecutive and simultaneous. Interpretation in international congresses abroad. WPC Russia, World Petroleum Congress, Moscow, Russia in 2014. Then in Korea, World Energy Congress, Malaysia, World Petroleum Congress in Qatar, and Moscow International Petroleum Club, Moscow, Russia in 2005. And then interpretation in international conferences, meetings in India. International Judiciary Conference, Supreme Court of India, February 2020, organized by and held at the Supreme Court of India. India, Tajikistan, Joint Commission meeting on trade, economic, scientific and technical cooperation in 2020 in Udyog Bhavan, New Delhi. Indian Steel Association, the conclave was held on 2019 at Hotel Lalit here in New Delhi. Then Kimberley process, industry training, oil and gas, leadership training, Asia Pacific Trade Facilitation Forum. It was also, yeah, okay. Okay, your resume is too long actually. Yes, there are so many things to tell. Okay. Fine. He has interpreted in India. Is few more I just want to tell. He is interpreted in India Kyrgyz Republic Business Forum, Fourth India Central Asia Dialogue, ICWA, BRICS Media Forum 2016, Economic Development Board, Government of Andhra Pradesh, presentation. Okay, fine. Okay, I think they are both long. Okay. Russian Business Mission in India, 18th India-Russia Working Group on Trade and Economic Cooperation, 6th India-Russia Forum on Trade and Investments, 6th meeting of INSTC Expert Group 1 on Commercial and Operational Matters, BRICS, 6th meeting of INSTC Expert Group 2 on Documentation, UNESCO World Heritage Periodic Reporting Workshop. Okay.
think that says.
Okay, I think.
That is,
Okay, that's okay. I invite
Maybe you can give the floor
Dr.
to Dr. James.
Yeah. Dr. C.V. James, I request you to please share your experience on interpretation.
thank you very much, Dr. Kiran Singh Verma. Thank you for inviting me to speak about my experience as an interpreter. And most I will be speaking mostly as an experience of an interpreter learner. Because I am how I learned it and how I am still learning. This will be more useful for the new students, as I have been told. Most of the people are many new students are attending this conference. So that way I'll be able to tell something which may be useful for them. Dr. Sonu, can I share the presentation? Yeah, okay, it is there. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir, sure.
Yes, sir, sure.
Give me 1 minute time, please. Can you see it, please?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. So, although, I mean, as I told you, it is the experience of an interpreter learner than a professional interpreter, because compared to the previous eminent speakers, Professor Ramadhikari Kumar and Professor Charanjit Singh, in front of them, I am a learner. I am still learning a lot. So, a professional interpreter, he facilitates the people to understand each other. That much important is his work. And with the service of the interpreters, the listeners with audio gears will have the same emotions and ideas of the speaker. So what they do, they at the same time hear, listen, comprehend the source speech and speak in the target language. What about you, new students? Do you want to become an interpreter? Let us see what are the minimum eligibility criteria to be an interpreter, mandatory conditions to be an interpreter. It is minimum you have to know 2 languages, and there should be a strong desire to work as an interpreter. That is what the minimum eligibility criteria. I think most of you are meeting this criteria, and I think you are already eligible to do so. But let us see now what all things I will share, what all things I have done, what are the options and things like that. So what are the roadmap? There are 2 options. One is join a professional interpretation course in any of the universities which are offering them. And second option is join any of the foreign language faculty, learn 1 or 2 languages, and start, and parallelly you start learning, attending courses on interpretation and also self-learning and self-training. This is the second option. So after my 12th class, when I decided to go for language, I had a choice. I was looking for the choices in India, but in India, so far we do not have specialized courses on foreign language interpretation. So I had to I had to apply for JNU and write the written test and interview and join for the course. That was the second option I opted. So admission to JNU has changed my future, because I knew very well at that time the possibilities in the language area, in teaching, in translation interpretation, in business sector, in tourism sector, and so on and so forth. So I started seriously taking this course. So when did I start my interpretation training? I started my interpretation training, I should say, from the very first classes on phonetics, because we have to acquaint with the aligned sounds, syllables, phonetic words, phonetic sentences, word stress, sentence intonation. All these things are very necessary for an interpreter, because to understand the speaker, you need to know the right, pronunciation and how they speak and things like that. And when you speak, you also need to have proper intonation, proper pronunciation. So that is very necessary, as Professor Ramadhikari Kumar pointed out, phonetica eta dusha isika. So that is almost, I also agree with that. Mainly this is connected with the oral activities of hearing, listening, speaking. So all our audio receptors are very active, as well as our vocal apparatus are very active in the process of analyzing the speech, what we hear, and when we speak to the audience through our microphone. So I will shift to the speech comprehension. Everybody has their own ways of understanding the text, the speech of the speaker. Everybody works out a way how to understand, how to analyze, how to process it, and how to transfer to the target language. So here, definitely the classes on morphemics, morphology, syntax, and lexicology have helped me, because while I was learning, again I tell you, my translation already started from the classes, because when I was learning parallelly, I was translating in my mind what is that word, what is that grammar, and it was parallelly going in my mind. Mostly it was with English, the L1, the first language, and sometimes at times to the mother tongue. So practically when I was learning Russian, I was also focusing to understand more about English language and a little about my mother tongue. So then at the same time, while I was studying in JNU, like any one of you, I was looking for more opportunities to interact with native speakers. So that is how I landed up in cultural center and took up the course. This is because as you know, at that time we don't have internet, we don't have any other means to communicate with easily with native speakers. So these are the ways we combine. Now you have varieties of ways in order to interact with the natives, and so many opportunities are there which we didn't have at that time. So then after 2 years, I thought to be good in language, which I recommend to all of you. At a certain point, you should live in the country of this language, what you learn. So when I got an opportunity to go for further studies to Russia, I opted for it, and I left JNU after 4 semesters of 5 years integrated program, and continued my studies in PFU, which is now known as Russian Friendship University. So there I had a very good exposure to Russian language, culture, the people, the country. So it was a very good experience. I have many eminent people, academicians have taught me, and especially I am very thankful to Professor Melnikov, who has introduced me to a new way of looking at language, a new approach to language. That is what given me an edge till today to assess, to analyze the language in a different way. So one of the aspects what is taught me is that to see there is a developing inventivity in Russian sentences, and you can have the kinetic picture of the developing event in the mind. Why I say this? Because while interpreting to pick the idea, the image of the idea, and transfer to the other language form. So here, those things what I learned from those courses and subsequent readings have helped me. So I used to make the event if blocks, info blocks of the sentences, where I see the entire sentence as a depiction of a developing event with a lot of, with an initiator of the event and his action, and how the subsequent participants are affected by the action, and how all these things are taking place, the circumstances and things like that, of time, place, or the aim or the cause, the reasons, and so on and so forth, so which are put into different blocks. And when I examined the note taking of different people, they also follow a kind of minimized system of this. So actually Russian language grammar is so complex, but at the same time, if you know the grammar information, it can hint to the developing event depicted in the Russian sentence to a certain extent. The famous sentence of Sherba, Glokaya Kuzdra Steka Budlanula Bokra E Kudryachit Bakaryonka. Here all the words are, it is unknown words. There are no, they don't exist. Though he has taken stems like Glok, Uzdr, Stek, Budel, Boker, Kur. These are meaningless. He has taken and made a sentence. But he put the real affixes. So how by the word building affixes and word changing affixes, how can you more or less understand what is being depicted in this sentence, although the identities are not real? So similarly, I can give another complex sentence, another sentence in Russian, where in place of lexical morphemes, I used x, and x as an unknown sign. So the sentence sounds like this: x ni mi xami, xavata, rasik sovivayet, x is xushak, и xushnych, xovikov. So by having only the grammatical morphemes, that is word building and word changing morphemes, more or less the plot is understood to the reader, to the listener. So this I just wanted to say, the grammar part is so important in Russian language to understand the idea, because as I told you before, each typical sentence of a Russian language is depicting a developing event. So how to, when the task for the interpreter is how to transfer the content fast to the language form. And Russian being a foreign language to me, I had to give concentration to all the complex problems, the grammatical problems, whether it is related to gender, number, case, aspect, verbs of motion, or the usage of prefixes, or different meanings of words and things like that. So here, when we continue our training in interpretation, we sit on certain problems and try to find solutions. Those solutions, because solution should enable us to quickly transfer the idea into the target language form. So the form is, when I'm talking about the translation from English to Russian, Russian being an inflected language with which uses a lot of word building and word changing morphemes. So you have to know very clearly what is what. So I have worked on different areas of grammar in order to facilitate fast transfer of idea into the form. So one of the small things what I have done, one of the things for a demonstration, I will show you how it has helped me to immediately transfer to the form where some difficulties are there. So let us take one of the things, what is the gender classification of nouns. So gender classification, of course, when it is A, we know it is feminine. Most of the nouns it is assigned to feminine gender. When it is O, it is to neutral gender, and when it is stem ending on a hard sign, it is most of them are to the masculine gender. But what happens when the stem ends on a soft consonant and have no gender markers? So here suddenly it came to my mind that you have to operate on the images what is given by those words, because by the images you can already classify them to feminine or masculine, because all the words which has got stem ending on soft sign belongs to either masculine or feminine. There is no neutral gender. So this is how I started classifying them on the criteria of the main protomorphic content, which we are already having the massiveness, which is characteristic principle of the feminine gender. Then I took all the variants of feminine gender, like massiveness. It can be also flatness, it can be plain, it can be abstract noun, because abstract nouns are also like a flat one. It's a generalized one, so it should be it is not individual, so as opposed to individual. Massiveness as opposed to individual. This is what I have done. So I just wanted to give you an idea how these visual images, because visual images is very fast we can understand, and we can just immediately understand then it is what is the gender, because in interpreting it should be very fast. So you see the image, it is flat. Yes, it is flat, so it is feminine. So this is like flat, feminine. So it's a furniture or a pastel or sketches. Everything is, you will find very easily, you can identify by the image what they give you, what to which it belongs to, they belong to feminine gender. So Khan, so definitely it is this thing. Chitraj, again flat. Yeah, so Medal, yes, it's a flat. And then Brove, yes, I don't think anybody is having Brove, is pointing towards the something. So, or Gruge, the anatomic part between the neck and the stomach, or Keist in two meanings, or Laden. So you can see I have taken all these photos from Google just to have a image conveyed, the typical ones which I have taken. So mostly these are the pictures, images, what is given in Google. And so, or Ploshich, Pavernest, this is Pavernest Mars, the steppe, or Stupen, Pechin, not individual, it's flat. Yeah, Crepus. Of course, the wall is so flat and it is seen very clearly. Page, yeah. So, or Priesten is the Sayanka Sudov, or Grias. We understand, all these things, very flat. Peel, very, very definitely we see these things. Shares, yes, it is not individual, it is massive. Yeah, Notch, yeah. So suppose Notch, it is flat, the darkness is flat. When you close the eyes, everything is flat. So, or Pole Notch, it is the same. Soul, again, it is not individual, so it is massive. And sales we understand as a biomassa sales reap. So that is how the understanding is not individual. It is again this thing. Or Syrian, these flowers we are not talking about individual one flower, or it is together we see. Crop, of course, that liquidity is definitely, it is not individuality. Any liquid thing you will find, okay, with the feminine gender, it's all flat. Or mass, I haven't taken because mass every time they have shown in a tube, but I am talking about outside the tube, yeah, how it looks like. It's not individual. Mage, so we are not talking about the product made of mage, but the same mage or stal. So it is we are not talking about the mold in which it is poured and the shape of what it gets, but the very the mage and stal. Yes, so all will be feminine. Very Markov, we are talking about это травянистое растение, So that trava is the main understanding, but not the individual Markov. That is not the primary meaning. So initially it is the pole, the Rastiniya, the trava. It is a trava, it is not Jeriva. So Ochir is something long. So definitely it's a kind of taken as a massive longness. Variant of massiveness is longness, also together with the flatness and plainness and things like that. Shape, yes, this is a long thing. Niche, yes, it's in the same category it goes to. And os, of course, it's a piece that connects to wheels. Coast, Yale. Here, yes, there can be some doubt, but Yolka is a word which is there, and there are some words which you need additional clarification, either from the etymology or from the internal form of the word, which is, consisting of the morphemes, what the word is constituting of. So otherwise, if you're talking about abstract names, all abstract names ending with soft sign, all are feminine. So you have got in front of you all the examples, and it's very easy. The moment you know the meaning and its abstractness means it's all, it's attributed to feminine. It's a generalization. It's a understanding of that generalization itself is a kind of abstractness. So that is all feminine. Then all these things continues, and of course biological sex is easily identifiable for animate nouns. Then of course there are certain words why cone is masculine and loshage is feminine, because when there are two nouns, and the one which is more active and more active, that will be termed as masculine, and the other one will be feminine. Because in this case, when you compare with the cone, comparatively more active one will be masculine. Если опираться на слова далее, то кон это верховая лошадь, на которой ездит, а вот лошадь, согласно этому словарю, домашняя скотина, которую эксплуатирует в домашнем хозяйстве. Работаем как лошади, but we don't say работаем как коня. Лошадиная сила, because это домашняя скотина, работает. И, естественно, рабочая сила, лошадиная сила, cannot be конная сила. Конный пол, because this is, we use the cone for riding, so definitely it is конный пол, no лошадиный пол. Or if you are talking about some heroes, это герой не на лошади, а на коне. So these type of things you can differentiate very well and come to the conclusion that the relatively less active one will go as, more active one will be masculine. So likewise, I have taken out all the words from Kratky Slavar Ruska Языка 1978 edition. All the words I have analyzed, and it is all divided into masculine and feminine, and 90% of the problem is solved for the students. So what I am telling is that when we try to understand the language form in order to do the interpretation, we hits upon certain solutions which are useful for my teaching as well. So I combined interpretation, teaching, and all other activities into is complementary to each other. That's what I have done, and the article is also already published on this in the Pre-Alphast journal. So in the similarly, singleness, oneness, concreteness, as opposed to massiveness, flatness, abstractness, is assigned to masculine gender, which we are giving a lot of this thing, words. Or January, February, April, it is the Radavoy Panyachia Mesits, which is masculine. Like coffee, it is a Radavoy Panyachia Napita, so that is why it is masculine. Kiesel, it is like a quas, something. No, that is also Napita, Radavoy Panyachia. That's why it is masculine. So those things are also can be explained very well. So GN, we already understand it's like opposite to the contrastive internal semantics to notes, because when you close your eyes, it's all flat. When you open, you already start seeing things. So that is why in various languages, GN is masculine and notes is feminine. It's the same thing in Russian.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there are some comments like how these things are going to help in interpretation.
Interpretation, that I already told you, we are learning a foreign language, and foreign language forms, because finally when we translate from English to Russian, you have to suddenly identify the words, the form. So because of the inflected nature of Russian language, we are facing a lot of problems with regard to the form. So I have taken some of the crucial things and I am just showing you how visual image can suddenly understand what is the form. And if you don't know which gender these words are, then totally the form will be wrong in Russian, because the complete declension completely depends upon the gender of these nouns. I hope I have answered to the question.
Yeah, but
I will not go. I am shifting to other areas.
We are going towards the language.
Language. So because I've also told you, this is one of the aspects I was learning while doing the interpretation. So these are the self-learning activities what I do in connection with the interpretation, and which I use for teaching. So let us see what are the preparation interpreters does to grab the content fast. We told about internal linguistic content, internal linguistic activities, what we have to do in order to grab the content fast. Now we are talking about extra linguistic activities in order to grab the content fast. These are the two aspects. So the one is we have to know the theme, subject matter, the domain knowledge, speech objective. When we go for any program, we should know what is the agenda, what is the program. Then also previously conducted similar events we check. Then we also go to the speaker's resume if possible, previous speeches on similar themes, and we also check the organizational activities. With all these things give a kind of domain knowledge, by which when we do the simultaneous interpretation, we should be also able to forecast to a certain extent what the speaker is going to say next, and plus we should understand what the speaker is telling. So a little bit of domain, a little bit of preparation with regard to these things will help to smoothen the fast transfer of content to the other language. So self-learning is always a continuous activity. So first of all, I advise the students, you just almost like a SWOT analysis, like strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat analysis. I mean to say, you assess yourself where you need, where you are strong, where you are weak, where you need to prepare more, where you have to train yourself more, and things like that. Then only this is what I do, so that I check. Okay, I have to sit on these aspects. For example, today Professor Charanjit Singh told how to compress the sentence without losing the idea. So that is a very good thing which I don't use. I translate full. I try to translate full. So that is a wrong thing, and I have to learn, as I am very much convinced of what he was telling. So I will start working on that. That is what I was telling, continuous learning. So where we have to see where are our weak points. My weak point I have to identify, I have to work, I have to start working. Some of the continuous preparation activities is extensive reading loud in Russian, because that is very beneficial. Communication with natives, listening to speeches, watch TV news, listen to radio news. Shadow recording means you listen to some recorded speech, and you repeat the speech in the same way. This is like when a scientist speak, or when a politician speak, you also try to understand how they are speaking, how they are formulating the ideas, and how they are conveying those things, in what language they use and things like that. So all these things are very important to be in their role, so that when we interpret, we understand them better. So there are a lot of learning and training resources available. For example, for speech repository resource of European Commission, you have the website. Another speech bank you have, and for self-learning training you have another one. So you get recorded speeches for to train for your training. So if I talk about when did I start my interpretation job, it was very surprisingly, it was when I learned in JNU 2 years, I went to PFU. The first assignment in the meeting, I have been asked to interpret for the fresh students. So relatively, I knew a little bit of Russian, but I am not an interpreter. Luckily, the language was from Russian to English, the interpretation. And secondly, the senior teacher was speaking very slowly, so I could guess from the context what was going on. And the most important thing is that none of that audience knew Russian. So that was an advantage which gave me a lot of strength to conduct that program. But afterwards I learned, yes, I have to prepare. This is an area where you can do something. So I started looking for more activities, and found works in exhibitions, Indian Festival in Moscow, and for business sectors and things like that. So at that time it was not money what I was looking for. I wanted some practice. I wanted to do that. Of course, we were living in the language surroundings, so we had a lot of opportunities in to interpret for our friends and things like that. So these all gave me an idea, okay, I should do this also. I should combine this also. And the Indian situation and the job situation, you may work as a teacher or you may work as an interpreter, or in some business sectors which is dealing with Russia and things like that. So I decided to combine so that my academic activities and my career activities, so that we have some jobs as well, and a lot of exposure we get out of this. So my first simultaneous interpretation job was a very good experience. Luckily, I had a very good partner who has asked me how you want to do it, whether you want to do from English to Russian or Russian to English. So definitely I prefer Russian to English, because at least I can do something. So the person has given me less work, but then it struck me, yes, this is how a senior person encourages a junior person in order to come up, without which we will not be able to come up in this area, because without practice, without doing it, we cannot learn. Everything is doing it, practice it, and then only we can learn. So a lot of themes covered, and my path was more into translation, then consecutive interpretation, then simultaneous interpretation. So this was a path which naturally I had. So one has complemented with the other one, with all the specificities of each type of interpretation or translation. So in conclusion, I just want to say that now India is a multi-lingual country, and we have and also we have lot of the understanding should be forged between the people, and also between India and other countries. India is also playing a crucial role in international organizations and also regional organizations. Therefore, interpretation is highly important, both for intranational and international activities. So in order to shape the future of national and international communication, multilingual India should start a specialized course in interpretation. And I urge universities like JNU and centers like Center of Russian Studies to start a specific interpretation course in Russian, and so that our students also will have the opportunity, the first option to join for specific interpretation courses. And also this will enable many of our students to serve the people of India by shaping the future of communication. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. James.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. C.V.
Wonderful
James.
talk. If
Yeah,
dear
stop
colleagues,
sharing.
if you have
Thank you.
any questions, you can raise your hand or you can just type in the chat box. Krishna, if you can just see if there are some questions on YouTube.
I can't hear right now properly. Just give me 1
Krishna,
minute, please. Now I can hear. Yeah.
Krishna, if you just see, there are some questions on YouTube. Krishna or Vikram? Actually, I'm facing a technical issue here because of the internet. So that's why just I need to.
At times there is no question I can see, but in YouTube I won't be able to say.
Okay, okay.
They have thanked, few of the participants have thanked Dr. James.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Yeah,
Ranjit
there are a lot of
Kumar
comments
for
to James, sir.
the talk. Yes.
All right, all right. So maybe there are no questions. Thank you very much, Dr. James, for this wonderful talk. I think like from all the speakers today, we have learned a lot. And we have, of course, students over here who must be motivated with your experiences, how you all started your career, your knowledge, your work, your interpretation. And I hope this will help the students to make their own path. So I would request now to Dr. Kiran Singh Verma to place the vote of thanks. Kiran ma'am, over to you.
Unmute your mic, Kiran.
Now, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, okay. On behalf of Center of Russian Studies, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to respected Professor Ramadhikari Kumar, respected Professor Charanjit Singh, dear Dr. C.V. James, for sharing your valuable insights and experience on translation and interpretation. We appreciate you all, respected senior colleagues, our teachers, and Dr. C.V. James for sparing your time and bringing your expertise and experiences and engaging all of us, the participants, in such fruitful and open exchanges throughout the event. We are very grateful to all of you. Hearty thanks. Мы выражаем искреннюю благодарность вам всем. Our special thanks go to our colleagues from Center of Russian Studies, Dr. Richa Sawant. I saw Dr. Richa Sawant. Dr. Meenu Bhatnagar is also there. Dr. Meenu Bhatnagar, Dr. Manradha Chaudhary, Dr. Radha Mohan Meena. Our thanks go to Devashmita, journalist in Moscow, for actively participating in the workshop. Our young colleague from Aligarh University, Dr. Abdul Rahman, is there. Thank you so much. Mr. Sushant Seni, Mr. Kaushal Kishore from Maharaja.
Suhail Akhtar is also here from Aligarh.
Who?
Suhail.
Huh? Suhail, okay. Oh, okay. Suhail is also there. Yeah, now I can see him. Yeah, he's there. And I can see Ravinder Singh also from, Ravinder is also from there, from Aligarh University. Yeah, Ravinder, Suhail, thank you so much for coming and attending actively. Sushant Seni, Mr. Kaushal Kishore, from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University. I've enlisted them. Actually, I have the list. Our young colleague from IFLU, English and Foreign Language University, young colleagues, two of them are there. From IFLU, English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, Dr. Kuvar Kant and Miss Monica Pandey. Thank you very much. I must express our deep sense of appreciation and big thanks to Mr. Bhargav Mitra, Joint Secretary, Mr. Anjani Kumar Das from Moscow, Miss Nilima Singh, then our students, Amit Kumar and other students, all the students, thank you very much for actively participating in the workshop. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the members of the organizing committee, our chairperson, Professor Ranjana Banerjee, who is the chief coordinator of all the events, including this event, and a big thanks to Dr. Sonu Saini for handling all the, I'll say, technical issues and everything related to this event. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, and one more. Thanks to all the volunteer students. Dr. Sonu Saini, can you please name the volunteers who are so actively helping us? Can you please name them? Yeah, we want to thank.
Was helping us, Vikram Chaudhary and Krishna Kumar. They were the brilliant scholars, one of the, two of the brilliant scholars of our center.
Yeah.
Who were helping us in
thank you so
organizing
much.
this event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishna Kumar and Vikram Chaudhary. Thank you very much. And my special thanks to the participants from Russia. There are few participants. I can see them. They are there. Yeah, they're still there. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Dr. Rameshwar Singh was there from the beginning.
Thank you so much. He's
Moscow.
there. Now I can see him. Dr. Rameshwar Singh, a big thanks to you. Thank you for participating, attending this workshop. Yeah, I have already named.
Okay. Yeah.
I've already named them. Yeah.
And we should thank Dr. Kiran Singh Burma for support, for organizing all these programs, along with Sonu Saini, Dr. Sonu Saini. Thank you all participants, and thank you. We are really grateful to all our speakers and all our senior teachers for coming and giving lectures during our webinars, sharing the experiences, sharing about different subjects, and giving the opportunity to all our students to listen to them, to they always heard about them, but they could not attend their classes. Now they're having this opportunity through webinar, online webinar. So big thanks to all the teachers and speakers.
I can see Professor Harish Kumar Vijra is also there. Thank you very much, sir, for coming and attending the workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pamina Naz is also there. Yeah, and all the students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiran ma'am, for handling all the sessions and wonderfully actively participating in organizing all the events. Now, if with your permission, if we can have a group photograph.
Yeah, that is a tradition, of course, we should have.
Yeah, can we all request to all, can we all switch on the webcam so that we can have a group photograph? Yes, please turn on your videos if you can, so that we can take pictures. I would request Vikram, because I'm facing a technical issue, so I'll request you, Vikram, to take the clicks. So I can see if people are turning their cameras. Please never turn on your mic, because you're getting background good sounds that we can expect, of course, during this time. Yes, you can see many of us have turned on the camera. I cannot turn on because otherwise my voice will not come over here. there is some low bandwidth issue. Okay, so maybe I'll just call 1, 2, 3, and Vikram and Krishna. Please take the screenshot or take the pictures. So I'll just say 1, 2, 3. Yes,
sir.
okay. Yeah, now we'll go to the second screen. On second screen, we can see Anjani ji is here, Nitisha Khori is here, Dmitry Babkov is here from Kazan.
Спасибо, господин Дмитрий Бабков, Татьяна Сазаненко, госпожа, я только что вас видела, извините, что не поблагодарила, но благодарю вас. Всех.
Спасибо.
You can see Zarina ji, Shreya and Gargi from Pushkin Institute. Yeah, so second click. Ras, Dwa, 3. And third one, you can see, yeah, Raman ji is here, Kanika ji is here on the screen. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, thank you very much. So we have the photographs, we'll share it with you all. If there any observation, any comments, of course, we are getting some comments like Gautam Kashyap, who is in St. Petersburg University, is saying that such program should be organized every week. Thank you for the compliment, Gautam. Actually, it takes a lot of efforts to to organize such events, and a lot of efforts from the side of speakers also, because they also have to prepare. They also have to get ready for such kind of events. So, of course, not every week, but of course, we can just try it often. So, as like we were saying that we know that we'll have another session of the same topic. So, we'll let you know. Thank you very much for all the compliments.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We'll soon be meeting.
Yes, Akhori Nitish.
Yeah.
I can see Akhori Nitish also. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So, thank you very much. Всего хорошего. До свидания. Берегите себя.
Да. Берегите себя, пожалуйста, и своих близких.
Thank you all. Спасибо всем.
Спасибо. Всего доброго.